think so too. Good evening. Thank you for joining us today. Sorry we're a little bit late. Executive session ran late. So I'd like to call our meeting back to order. Roll call, please.
Ms. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Romero?
Here.
Dr. Ravi?
Here.
Ms. Luna Rose? Ms. Ekstrom?
Here. Next is the land acknowledgement statement given by Ms. Shaw.
On behalf of the Governing Board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, C.D. Shaw, acknowledge that the schools, buildings, and facilities of the Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Tohono O'odham Nation and the federally recognized tribal land of the Pasquayaqui tribe.
Thank you. And if we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is agenda adjustments. Dr. Trujillo.
President Ekstrom, members of the governing board, I'd like to move up item 8.2. We do have a guest presenter for item 8.2. I'd like to request that it follow the call to the audience, item 5.1.
Thank you. Next is awards and recognitions. Dr. Trujillo. Oh, and we do have interpretation services if anyone needs any.
Yeah, hello, Tucson Unified Community. It's a pleasure to see everybody again here for our final governing board meeting in the month of March. Just a couple of items. It's always great to recognize staff, student, employee, and in this case, community excellence in service and support of our schools. I had an opportunity to go out to Lynn Urquidez shortly before actually right after the Christmas break, the winter break, and I was just absolutely floored at the work that had been done at the school to clear out some long-standing challenges that the school had with some landscaping, some weeding that needed to be done, some painting that needed to be done, a new garden that was waiting to be planted. And the first thing I said was like, oh, who in operations came out here? This is awesome. I want to figure out who this was so we can celebrate them. They said, no, there's this church down the street that out of the goodness of their hearts came onto the campus, brought heavy equipment, tractors and the like, and came on and spent an entire day beautifying the campus. So it's my honor today to take a moment to recognize the outstanding work of Zion City Church, its nonprofit branch, Zion City's Care Center, for their exceptional contributions to the community, specifically its support of Lynn Urquidez Elementary. December 1st, they organized and led a community event called Gratitude Day, benefiting both Safford K-8 and Lynn Urquidez Elementary. Thanks to the dedication of over 1,800 volunteers, more than 50 projects were completed across both schools. I'm speaking to my experience at Lynn Urquidez, but they also did the same thing out there at Safford, which was wonderful. These projects ranged from physical improvements to campus beautification, left staff and students with a lasting reminder of how much their community does care for them and how much they do support their traditional public schools in their neighborhoods. The work done by Zion City and Zion City Care Center speaks volumes about the power of local faith-driven organizations and their ability to make a real difference in the lives and the experiences of not just our students, but our employees coming onto campuses that have been beautified. To further highlight the incredible work done on Gratitude Day, we do have a video showcasing the project. So we'll direct everybody to the projector.
But I think the biggest gift is we can always say, look at all these people that showed up because they care about you. And that's a gift that you can't put a dollar sign on. That's a gift you can't say, if you do this, it'll change something. That's a gift from the heart. And a gift from the heart is having hundreds of people show up to your home school and say, you matter enough that we're here. And I think that's your biggest gift.
It just feels good to know that people are willing to take the time and help our little school.
Right.
So it just feels good that there are still people that are kind and people that are still thinking about how can I help my community. So that's a blessing.
In a time when so much attention is paid to the voices that demonize public schools and want to dismantle public education and discredit the hard work of our wonderful teachers and educators and disregard our needs for capital funding and adequate resources for the communities that we serve, organizations like Zion's Church very quietly get up, get out, and do something about it, and they lead with their hearts. And so tonight, I want to recognize, I've got a representative from Zion City Church and Zion City Care Center. Here this evening, I'd like to present them with the Superintendent's Award for Excellence, for their excellence in service and commitment to our school community. So come on forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we just recognized David Rivetta, Director of Operations at Zion City Care Center. Thank you. And Scott Hatlevick, Campus Pastor at Zion City's Santa Cruz campus. It was their leadership and dedication that brought the day of service to fruition. So one more round of applause for them. The next recognition is it's a bittersweet for me because the moment has come for us to say goodbye and farewell and good luck to a trusted member of our team. We want to take a moment to highlight the service of Mr. Blaine Young, who for the last 7 years has also led with his heart since he joined our team back in 2018. One of the things that I shared with the team this morning as we gathered to say goodbye to Blaine, one of the things that radiated from Blaine immediately from the first moments that I met him was his belief and faith in public schools and his story about how his public school education changed the course of his life. I always say to my team members, to be able to serve on my team, you got to believe two things. Number one, that public schools are transformational institutions that change lives for the better. And number two, you have to believe that no matter what area of the district you're coming into work for, transportation, counseling, operations, custodian, classroom teacher, principal, you have to believe that at the heart of that work is that classroom teacher. And everything that we do is built around supporting that classroom teacher. And Blaine radiated that. And he came in, and I often say this, he came in as the right leader at the right time for the right organization that had struggled with leadership in the operations area, struggled to effectively model visibility, accessibility, and responsiveness to our school principals and our sites, struggled to collaborate effectively across departments across the district and with our sites. And Blaine completely changed that narrative. And it is through his greatest strength, which he's very knowledgeable in informational technology, and he's very knowledgeable in all areas of operations. But Blaine's biggest strength is the grace for which he leads. No situation has ever been too conflictive for him, has been too confrontational, has been too heated, whether he's had to step in and mediate with a neighborhood association upset with the district or work with our unions, our associations on some labor management challenges, or sit and listen to an employee experiencing challenges. Whether it was a management issue or a labor issue, Blaine had always led first, compassionately, empathetically, and with grace. He is going to be missed, so I want to take this opportunity to thank him for his wonderful 7 years of service and wish him all the best in his new retirement endeavors, mainly being a grandfather and enjoying his grandkids and enjoying his post-TUSD retirement. So join me in giving a round of applause to our outgoing Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Blaine Young, tonight's recipient of Superintendent's Award for Excellence.
Thank you, Dr. Trio. I'm really humbled by the recognition. I'm really blessed to have been part of your team from day one. And these wonderful people that I've been able to not only call colleagues, team, but friends. This has been amazing 7-year journey here for me. And I can't think, I've told our Dr. Trio and our team already this, but I couldn't think of a better way for me to spend the last 7 years of my career. There really is not much work that's more gratifying than working in a school district where you touch the community. And I was very touched by what we saw from Zion City. You know, it's community. Schools are not an island unto themselves. They're a representative of the communities that they educate kids for. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Trio. I want to thank the team that's become so precious to me, and to thank the board for all the resources that you've given us to support this school district. I know that it's challenging times, but I have a great level of confidence in Dr. Trio and this team to lead the district through this difficult time. So I just want to say God bless you and thank you for the opportunity that I've had to be here, part of Team TUSD for these years. Thank you very much.
And Blaine, on behalf of a grateful board, we congratulate you. We thank you. And my only sadness is that I've only been with you for a couple years, but thank you.
President Ekstrom, that ends awards and recognitions. As we transition now, we take this moment to turn it over to our governing board president to observe the titanic loss that our community sustained in the last week with the loss of Congressman Grijalva. Not only the congressman, before he was congressman for District 7, a lot of people, I think, forget that he was a TUSD board member for 3 terms. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to our governing board president for her words, followed by a moment of silence, and then we will have a commemorative performance of Tucson High's mariachi group, Mariachi Rayos del Sol, outside to commemorate his life and memory. President Ekstrom.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. As you see, Ms. Luna Rose is not here tonight. She served for many years under the congressman, so she is attending his wake tonight. And when she returns, she will be giving her words of how the congressman inspired her and just her memories. So, you know, I just wanted to explain to the audience why she was not here today. But on behalf of the TUSD Governing Board, we would like to express our deepest condolences on the passing of Congressman Raul Grijalva. Our thoughts are with his wife Ramona, his daughters Adelita, Raquel, and Marisa, his sisters Lydia and Norma, and his grandchildren Adelina, Raul, Joaquin, Floyd IV, and Belen, and his many nieces and nephews, and many others who loved him. Raul got his start in politics when he was first elected to the TUSD Governing Board. He was the first Latino school board member to be elected to the district. He has many notable accomplishments, which include in 1976, he championed, introduced, and successfully secured the votes to establish Howenstein as the first solar-heated high school in Arizona and the first comprehensive high school campus fully accessible to students with disabilities in Pima County. In 1979, Grijalva's advocacy resulted in board approval to establish Davis as a two-way dual-language magnet school, along with the establishment of magnet programs such as Carrillo and Borton. Grijalva's board leadership and spirited defense of labor and advocacy for better teacher compensation was critical in ending the 1978 teacher strike with a 2-year labor agreement that not only featured better compensation, but a more robust health benefits at lower cost to employees. In 1978, Grijalva cast his vote to formally establish the original African American Studies Department, which at that time provided courses in Black history and culture to nearly 3,000 students in the district. In 1983, Grijalva championed the board's successful vote to establish Tucson High as the new Tucson High Magnet School after 2 years of parent and community advocacy. In 1982, Grijalva cast the deciding vote to formally establish University High School as a comprehensive high school in its own right and moving it to the grounds of Rincon, formally establishing RUHS. In 1985, Grijalva was a passionate voice all over the community, urging voters to support a $47.5 million bond and a $17 million override, which were both successful and passed by voters that fall. In 1987, Grijalva Elementary School was opened in the honor of Congressman's leadership and the legacy of his service on the board. Raul was dedicated to and committed to Southern Arizona, and that is something that should be celebrated. He lived a life of service to his community. Thank you, Raul, for your work in this district. May your memory be a blessing, and may you rest in peace. And now if we could have a moment of silence. Thank you.
At this moment, we invite everybody to step outside for an in memoriam performance of Amor Eterno by Tucson High's Mariachi de Rayas del Sol.
It's just really light for me. I don't know if there's a way to make it any brighter.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Maria Chibrayo del Sol and the Tucson High community, we'd like to express our thanks to Representative Raul Grijalva. No matter what side of the political side you're on, he worked for us all. He's a shining example for all of us, and even though he's not with us here in body, he will always remain with us in spirit. I hope that we can all learn to move our district and our individual schools forward in the spirit of love and peace and harmony. So thank you all for all that you do for us, and let's just keep moving forward.
Thank you again to Sahai Mariachi. Next, we'll move on to board member activity reports. Would anybody like to go first? Okay, Ms. Shaw.
Good evening, everyone. So I attended the Alternative Education Advisory Committee meeting. I believe it was last week or the week before. I also met with a professor from the English department at the University of Arizona. They're starting to do this initiative where they're trying to encourage, students in K-12 to read more and improve literacy rates. So it was just a first meeting, but they're having this read of Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles. Most people don't know this, but Ray Bradbury went to school here in Tucson Amphi School District. And so I'll be reading a section of that book next month. I spoke with a reporter from KGON 9 about the issue at Pueblo High School's football field that we've heard about for so long, and I hope that that story kind of brings about change over at Pueblo so we could get them a field that they deserve. From that, I had a lot of people reach out to me about other conditions at other high schools. And so I, hope that we can take care of all of our outstanding issues with some of those bond funds that we have. I also spoke again with a parent about the ongoing issue at a middle school that I mentioned at my last board member activity report, and happy to say that that issue is being rectified. And then me and Ms. Ekstrom met, was it last week? But I'm looking forward to working with her on some really cool programs that we can both align on. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Shaw?
Thank you, President Ekstrom. So a lot of school tours over the last month. As we wrapped up Love of Reading, I had a chance for the first time for most of these schools to visit Steele Elementary School. Thank you to Principal Harris for the tour and introduction to that community. Henry Elementary School with Principal Heminger, and Ford Elementary School. And thank you to Community Liaison Heather Martin for the tour and introduction to that community. I had a chance to also visit Erickson Elementary School. Thank you, Principal Romero. Kelland Elementary. Thank you, Principal Shavioni. And Myers-Ganogue with Principal Stefanik. Thank you, everyone, for all the tours. Introduction, I think all those 6 schools are the first time I had a chance to visit. and also reading to the students some great books on the elementary school level. I had a chance to go to Lineweaver Elementary to read to a couple of classes, including my twins' first grade class and a fifth grade class. Usually when I read, I'm reading to younger classes, and the fifth grade classes always intimidate me a little bit. So I got to get on my element and talk to the fifth graders there. And also, what an interesting experience for the first time, joining the virtual Love of Reading with the Multicultural Curriculum Department. And it was a virtual Zoom with many students. Some of them were our TUVA students. Some of them were in classrooms around the district. Thank you, the Multicultural Department Head, Rosalina Rodriguez and Junko Sakoi, for organizing this event. I think there were 300 students there, and I got to read a book with the Multicultural Department in mind that was written by an author written about Gujarat in India, where my family is originally from. And so it was really nice to see a story highlighting some of the experiences from my heritage. I had a chance recently to visit the Magnet Department with Mr. Cameron Taravati, and thank you, Aaron and Twyla, for the introduction to the department and all the work we're doing for our Magnet schools and curriculum. And also had a chance to represent the board as a liaison to the audit committee. We had a meeting last week that was very interesting and very informational about what's going on in the district. And also joined the healthcare task force a few weeks ago as we're continuing to work as a district to figure out how we can best to meet the needs of our staff throughout the district on our healthcare benefits.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Mr. Romero?
All right, continuing Love of Reading as well. I did that at Robinson and Carrillo. School visit, Principal Tom Henninger had Henry, one of our Henry heroes. He walked me through the intruder incident we had last year, and I'm glad to hear the intruder is serving 7 years in jail. I had an opportunity to visit DAPE at both Palo Verde and Doolin. Learned a lot about this program. More Love of Reading at Myers-Ganong, Bonias, and Kelland. And we have a Schiavone brother and sister combo at Bonias and Kelland. And I was made aware just recently that they lost their mother in early March. I know they're part of our Tucson community, so our TUSD community. So before I continue my board report, I just want to do a quick prayer if anybody wants to participate. Aloha, Father, please give comfort to the Schiavone family. I'm grateful for the relationship I've been able to build with Angela and Frankie. Please give them love and support as they heal from their loss and celebrate the memories of their mother. In your name, amen. More Love of Reading at Fruit Tindler and Whitmore, and I haven't looked at them all. Thank you, Fruit Tindler. I got a bunch of letters from all the kids for reading from them over there, so I'm excited to read those. Met with Luke at Mansfield on his last year there, and want to send him love and prayers in his new path after his time as principal to ministry. God bless you and much success. Met with Lucinda Bloom for student award ceremony and school visit. My second longest school visit. She's doing great things at Bloom. School visit with Deborah at Seacrest. I also wanted to announce with gratitude to Mr. Valentin on the grounds department, who, from what I heard, worked diligently to fix a Seacrest irrigation and making sure he spent the time to do the job correctly. So thank you, grounds and Mr. Valentin. School visit with Vincent Ford. They have a little jewel on the east side, and next year they will have a KidCo program in place. So we will have an after-school program for parents that need that service in that area. We as a district should celebrate and promote this program and advertise with Ford and potentially increase their enrollment. A special visit with Jesus at Dietz. On my last visit to Dietz, they invited me for a birthday lunch. So I took them up on that, and I want to thank Julie at Dietz for the most memorable birthday that I can remember in 54 years of life. She made homemade shredded red chili tacos, so phenomenal, and yes, I had 5. Beans, rice, birthday cake, and even cupcakes. And then we had to do a school visit, a walk around to walk off those 5 tacos I ate. If you basically, Dietz, you set the bar so high for best school visit so far. I want to say mahalo to all of you. Finished off with school visit with Brenda at Monzo, met with Norma and Kelly at Catalina High School, and Michelle at Tuva. Got to see how our online school handles in-person testing today. Also see the finished remodel of their campus. Since my initial visit, they were just starting the remodel, so thank you very much.
Thank you. For me, I did a school visit at Utterback Middle School. Thank you to Ricky Valdez, the vice principal, Hillary Lotz from Avid, Zataya and Fabian, the students who took me around, they were testing that day, but that didn't stop me from learning all about AVID and how that is implemented into Utterback. It's amazing. It's just an amazing school. After that, I had a meeting with Principal Taranika Sanders, and I think I spent about 2 hours there really learning about Utterback and all of the great things that they are doing. They are a Verizon Innovative Learning Campus. They have esports and AVID demonstration school. So if you are in need of a middle school, please visit Utterback and all of our middle schools. I'm really pushing if your student and family needs a school, to visit as many schools as you can to get a feel for the campus and what would be right for your student. Next, I did Love of Reading. I finished off my Love of Reading at Robinson Elementary School. Thank you to Mrs. Gallego and the other second grade class. They had really great questions for me afterwards, and I just loved being there. They were just so loving and caring, and when they tell me that I'm 29, I love it even more. Next, I went to Grijalva Elementary, and I read to 2 first grade classrooms there, and first grade keeps you on your toes, so thank you, Grijalva Elementary. And then this past weekend, my family and I, including my daughter Zoe, we marched in the Cesar Chavez and Delora Huerta March that started at Pueblo, and we walked from there to Rodeo Park. And now I'm a track and field mom, so I attended a track and field event at Rincon. Thank you so much, Rincon, for hosting the elementary events there for, it was Bonias, Whitmore, Lineweaver, and I know that I'm missing someone else, but it was an amazing time. Everything was really great, so thank you. And right after that track and field meet, I headed over to the Bond Advisory Committee meeting, and I was able to be there for a little bit before having to pick up my daughter. So that concludes my board report. And thank you, colleagues, for all of your time and being out into our schools. Next, we'll move on to item 8.2, acceptance of the fiscal year annual comprehensive financial report for the TUSD School District. Dr. Trujillo is not here. Oh, you know what? We're going to do call to the audience first. We only have 4 speakers. So go ahead, Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, President Ekstrom. Members of the public may speak during the call to the audience. The governing board clerk shall be responsible for recognizing speakers and for maintaining order where it may be appropriate. Those who speak in person or want to have their comments read shall email or call the board office or complete a request to address the board form before the meeting. Speakers who have not completed a request form are not permitted to address the board. The speaker must state their full name and topic prior to addressing the board. Speakers are encouraged to be brief with a maximum time of 3 minutes. While more than one speaker may speak together in the time allowed, speakers are reminded that they are not allowed to speak more than once, and they may not transfer or delegate their time to others. If there are documents for the board, please give them to the board office staff, and they will ensure each board member receives a copy. Those attending the meeting and or speaking before the board shall observe rules of good conduct. Speakers shall also refrain from inappropriate or slanderous remarks. And because TUSD serves students from preschool through high school, speakers should be aware there may be children present and listening. At the end of the call to the audience, the governing board president will ask if any board member wishes to respond to a criticism, wish to ask staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. No more than 2 members may address each topic. All right, we have 4 speakers tonight, all in person. We're going to start with Dr. Teresa Toro, followed by Jerry Schuster, Tara Ratcliffe, and Peter Norquist.
Hello, good evening. Just for clarification, so I have 2 Academy students that are with me that would like to speak towards the topic. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
All right, as long as it's within the 3 minutes, right? Yes. Okay, so our topic is about the Pueblo College Preparatory Academy. And with me, I'm Dr. Teresa Toro, and with me is Esmeralda Almazan and Marta Saralegui. And to begin, I think it's very appropriate that also when Congressman Grijalva was serving on the TUSD governing board, he also in the 80s pushed for a plan called the Pueblo Plan so that Pueblo High School wouldn't be closed. And so here we are now, many years later, talking about the Pueblo College Prep Academy. So I'm really thankful to Governor Grijalva for that as well. The Pueblo College Preparatory Academy, we've been working on it to build it since 2008. But it was formally launched and established in 2019 with in collaboration with me and David Montaño, assistant principal who passed away several years ago. And we now have over 210 members in the Pueblo College Prep Academy, and they all share 3 goals in common. One is that they want to be able to have a rigorous 4-year plan so that they can apply and potentially be accepted to prestigious colleges and universities, be academically ready to attend these schools, and to have as many scholarships as possible to be able to pay and graduate potentially debt-free from these institutions. And so part of the plan is that they have to do community service or capstone work. And we just have had Ivy League students our Pueblo students go on the Ivy League trip. We're wanting to also extend it to the West Coast trip, and we're wanting to talk later, not right now, obviously, but for logistical support to increase the number of academy students at Pueblo, as well as funding support and professional clothing. We get professional clothing donations, both new and lightly used, for our students that get to go to have these interviews with for scholarships, for colleges, and to attend very important events that we are asked to attend with our principal. So without further ado, I would like my academy students to speak on their experience with the academy.
Hi, good evening. My name is Marta Saralegui, and I want to speak to our 4-year plan that we follow here in the brochures. So throughout that, the plan here, we follow it. So it's important as a first-gen student, as we are, for us to follow this plan made, because not many of us know what we need to do. So her taking a village upon herself to have this plan for us has been great.
Yeah, of course, to reiterate what she said, it does take a village, and especially being a first-generation student and growing up with my elderly grandmother, the academy helped me so that it kind of set that foundation and a plan for me to attend. So this fall, I'm going to attend Yale University, and so the academy has helped me with that.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jerry Schuster, followed by Tara Radcliffe.
Good evening, Board President Ekstrom, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Trujillo, Councilor Ross, and staff. And once again, thank you for this opportunity to speak before you. First, I want to express my condolences to the Grijalva family and to express my gratitude to the Grijalva family for all their years of public service. Tonight, I want to briefly give some positive feedback about the new digital hall pass system. Right now, only a few schools are using it, and 2 of them happen to be the 2 schools I sub at, namely the schools I attended all those years ago, Tucson High and Mansfield. So I've become quite familiar with the hall pass system. And there are several advantages to using that system. First off, it makes it easy to keep track of when a student left the class, how long the student was out, where the student was going. So it's easy to keep logs, keep records. Another advantage is that both from the sending end and the receiving end, you could see what's happening. If let's say I send a hall pass or a student to a hall pass on a hall pass to the nurse's office or the counselor, the people on the other end can see it as well. They get alerted to, a student's on the way over here. And then if, let's say, a student shows up tardy and checks in with the attendance office, then I could see readily the pass coming that the student's on the way to the class I'm in. So those are 2 advantages right off the bat. And another advantage is that it's actually more secure because, as we all know, if you use the old-fashioned paper hall passes, inevitably a pad of passes is going to disappear and, shall we say, fall into the wrong hands. Using the digital pass certainly addresses that system. And another advantage is that, well, here at TUSD, of course, we all talk about we want to go green, and there are many things we're doing in that regard. Well, this would help in that way as well, because if you eliminate one use of paper and have it all digital, well, right there we're using that much less paper. So it's consistent with everything else that we want to do as we go green. And it's right in line with things like having lessons done on platforms like Canvas, Clever, what have you. So again, it helps in that regard as well. That would helps us fulfill our mission in that direction. And once again, thank you all very much, and have a good evening.
All right, next we have Tara Radliff, followed by Peter Norquist.
My name is Tara Radliff. I'll be speaking about AI. You've been using the last few years as a springboard to embed more technology into TUSD, pushing children towards increased screen time. Studies have shown that excessive screen time and media multitasking can negatively affect executive functioning, sensory motor development, and academic outcomes. Early screen exposure has been associated with lower cognitive abilities and academic performance in later years. Language development is also affected. It diminishes the quantity and quality of interactions between children and caregivers. It leads to problems in social emotional development, including obesity, sleep disturbances, depression, and anxiety. It can impair emotional comprehension, promote aggressive behavior, and hinder social and emotional competence. There are also risks with generative AI like ChatGPT, which have led to children committing suicides. Children need time away from technology to let their minds wander, to encourage creativity and innovation. Regarding security, Andrew Lone, a senior fellow at the Center for Security and Emerging Technology at Georgetown University, and colleagues have worked at drawing attention to growing body of academic research showing that AI and machine learning algorithms can easily be attacked in many different ways. Why does this policy only highly encourage staff to take AI training before using it? No training will lead to breaches, hacking, and student privacy violations. The policy states no PII, sensitive or confidential information shall be processed by AI systems without proper authorization and safeguards. So you can and will allow generative AI access to sensitive student information. How is that safeguarding their data? Employees are subject to discipline for misuse, but what about the damage it can do to students? Who's responsible for that? Human jobs at risk. In 2 years, TUSD will be in a budget deficit. Will implementing AI use now give you the excuse to get rid of teachers or other staff because they're an extra expense that can be cut from the budget? Don't forget the policies can be updated at any time. This policy could be edited next year to remove the AI should not replace human educators, administrators, or staff in preparation for a budget deficit. I urge you to vote no on item 8.3. And also for clarity, the board rules are you're not supposed to submit your time to other speakers, and you just allowed that.
All right, next we have Peter Norquist.
All right. Good evening, members of the governing board, Superintendent Trujillo. I am also interested in addressing item 8.4, the second read of AI use in education. And I want to reiterate a few concerns that I spoke about last time I spoke on this topic, and then mention a couple more points. I read through some of the public comments that were published, and thank you for doing so, and they brought up some good points. The first is about plagiarism, which, as I mentioned last time, I'm glad that there are there are some guardrails that are being mentioned to be put in place if this is adopted. But Plagiarism is something that has become a huge issue with the proliferation of AI programs. And one way to think of this is that it can be iterative. So AI programs right now have been called out because they will scour the internet and copy information without giving attribution and configure it in a new way if it's prompted to put together, for example, an essay on a topic. This then can be referred to if it's released back into the online environment and be copied again in its new configuration. That process will iterate to the point where original content is never attributed, but it eventually becomes obscured. So nobody realized that plagiarism is even happening. Data collection is another point that is important to know about. One parallel that I could cite is what's gone on with 23andMe, the ancestry company that's declaring bankruptcy right now, that had stringent privacy rules, which are now becoming defunct because it's changing hands. You can't anticipate that the same thing would not necessarily happen with the data collected here. One of the big points I want to make is that AI is being normalized in everyday life right now at a pace that I think is actually very worrying and counterproductive, and people are being conditioned to accept AI taking on various functions in their lives throughout multiple domains before it is really examined and studied, what the effects are going to be of this AI penetration into our lives. One thing I'm observing is a loss of sovereignty, including a loss of ability, the atrophy of brain use. Think of people not being able to navigate anymore without GPS, not being able to recall phone numbers. Those are just indicative of a number of functions that people are going to be losing. And then, as mentioned, loss of jobs and workforce is always a concern. Ultimately, I think a lot of this is disempowering, and convenience isn't always a good thing. So I just want to say TUSD has a chance to be a leader in minimizing AI in the school system. It doesn't mean you're technophobic and it's not a race, but saying no to AI will provide students with more confidence and self-reliance. Thank you for your time.
Sure. Peter. And President Extra, who's called to the audience?
Thank you, Dr. Shaw. Would any member like to speak on anyone to call to the audience? Yes, Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, President Ekstrom. And thank you, Dr. Toro, for coming to talk about the Pueblo Prep Academy. I learned about it for the first time just a few weeks ago when I visited Pueblo High School, and I think it's a great program to highlight. Dr. Trujillo, I love, I know we always talk about having arts and music and other programs come here to begin a meeting. I love to highlight some of our academic programs as well, because I know it's easy to say negative things about our district, but we're doing some amazing things in all of our schools and highlighting these kinds of programs, whether in your superintendent report and highlighting the students, that are going to these amazing colleges and universities after graduation from schools that that traditionally haven't sent kids to those campuses, I think is really important to be able to highlight. Thank you, Jerry, for bringing us some positive feedback. We don't get too much positive feedback on programs that are working, so I appreciate that. Ms. Radliff, I think we can agree on the screen time. I think that's a big issue that we're having in our district for our students this worldwide right now, and love to kind of brainstorm how we can try to get back to more traditional books and paper and pencil for a lot of our students. And one last comment about President Ekstrom. Again, where we'll say, while more than one speaker may speak together and time allows, so more than one speaker may speak together and time allowed, speakers are reminded they are not allowed to speak more than once, and they may not transfer or delegate their time to others. So the intention of that is not have a speaker come in over and over again with one person saying more than 3 minutes worth of things. That's the intention for that.
Thank you. Ms. Shaw?
Thanks to everyone who spoke today. I would like to put on a future agenda the Pueblo College Preparatory Academy, spoken about by Dr. Toro and the two students who were here. I think they're doing fabulous work, like all the students at Pueblo who are attending Ivy League schools now. I think it's something that we should learn more about and maybe see how we can expand their program at other schools or apply what they've done to other school programs. Thank you, Mr. Schuster, for talking about the digital hall pass. I didn't know much about it, but I'm intrigued, and I wonder if, if we implement the digital hall pass elsewhere, perhaps we can increase our average daily membership. And then also thank you to Mr. Norquist and Ms. Radliff for your comments about the AI policy.
Okay, thank you. That concludes call to the audience. Next, we'll move on to item 8.2, which is acceptance of the fiscal year 24 annual comprehensive financial report for Tucson Unified School District. Dr. Trujillo.
President Ekstrom, I'd like to welcome our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Ricky Hernandez, to introduce the item. It's our annual presentation and acceptance of the annual comprehensive financial report, which also features a public hearing portion that will also be open for public feedback. And I think we also have Mr. Heinfield here also ready to present the particulars. So with that, we'll turn it over to you, Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah, so good evening, board members. This is the annual communication to you as the governing board on the annual comprehensive financial report. So just as a quick reminder, this is a report that we are required to compile every single year on our financial statements and essentially the state of the finances of the school district from an external auditor. We have Christopher Heinfield here from Heinfield Meach, who will guide you through this presentation. The audit committee actually received this presentation in late February. They, as noted in your board agenda item, they are actually recommending to you that you accept the annual comprehensive financial report, but we are presenting you, giving you this presentation for your feedback and your questions. So I'll pass it over to Chris.
All right, thank you, Governing Board, or Madam President, Governing Board members, Dr. Trujillo, for inviting me here this evening to present to you on the annual comprehensive financial statements or report. I've got a lot of slides about the report, but there's some required communications to governance, that being yourselves, that I'd like to go through that go in conjunction with this report. Usually they're communicated through a letter that we typically will issue at the end of the audit that goes in more detail of these matters, but since I'm here, I'd like to at least summarize some of them for you. But before we get there, I did just want to provide a brief background about our firm. We're a local firm here in Arizona. We have offices in Tucson, Scottsdale, and Flagstaff, about 55 employees, and we primarily focus on governmental and nonprofit audit and consulting work. It's really what we were founded on about 40 years ago. We also did approximately 85 school district audits this past year. Some of the team members, I was introduced. I'm the audit partner on the TUSD engagement. Our audit lead or your main contact is Kara Curtis. She's an audit manager out of our Tucson office. She has 14 years of experience and has supervisory experience of over 130 financial and compliance school district engagements. I've been with our firm for 18 years and have experience with over 140 school district compliance and financial statement engagements. So we've worked with a lot of school districts. Our firm specializes in this, and the range of school districts range from school districts bigger than TUSD to those school districts with only an ADM of maybe 1 or 200. So we see the full gamut of the school districts here in Arizona. Some of that required communication to you is the audit timeline. When we issued the audit engagement letter, that's the beginning of the audit. This occurred in May. Throughout the course of last year, we had several on-site and remote or virtual field works throughout the year, as you can see noted. And then at the end on February 19th, we did present the annual comprehensive financial report to your audit committee and had some really great discussions with them about the content of the report, as well as some matters that I'll try to go over as we go through this presentation. The scope of services is we're really doing what we call almost 3 different audits here. We're doing an audit in accordance with U.S. generally accepted auditing standards, an audit in accordance with government auditing standards, and an audit in accordance with uniform guidance. The latter 2, government auditing standards and uniform guidance, really relate to the single audit report that the audit committee reviewed at their last meeting. The audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards is the audit opinion that's in the ACFR that I'll be discussing tonight. We also did complete the USFR compliance questionnaire, which is a state mandated questionnaire for the school districts. I always like to talk about responsibilities. It's in all our independent auditor reports, but our responsibilities are to provide reasonable but not absolute assurance that the financial statements are materially correct and can be relied upon. Typically, that relates to your external stakeholders. Examples would maybe be if the state of Arizona was using the act for your bondholders, bond rating agencies will often look at it, but it's often used by yourselves and other members of the community. Management and the board is ultimately responsible for the financial statements in this report, though. And then we always like to talk about fraud. We didn't discover any fraud during our audit at TUSD, I'm glad to say, but I like to make sure I reiterate where the responsibilities of that lie. The responsibilities for establishing internal controls and detecting fraud relate to the board and management. Our responsibilities are to make sure we're inquiring of individuals at the district, whether it be board members, management, or other employees, whether they're aware of fraud or noncompliance, as well as developing any other additional procedures. We perform a lot of data analytics to identify areas of financial anomalies where maybe it looks like the data isn't accurate, and we specifically hone in on test work related to those items in trying to ensure that we're incorporating that into our audits. We're required to let you know of any new accounting policies or standards that have been implemented during the year. GASB Statement 100, which sets a lot of the accounting standards, was implemented by the district but didn't really have a huge or significant impact. Accounting estimates is another one. Useful lives of depreciable assets, insurance claims that have been incurred but maybe not reported, and then assumptions used in the actuarial evaluations of the pension and OPEB plans, and that's typically handled by ASRS, the state pension plan. One of the discussions we did have during our audit committee during the audit committee presentation really focused around those useful lives of depreciable assets and capital assets in general. Capital assets are valued at a historic cost. That may come to a shock to some individuals, but it's not something that's adjusted each year based on fair market value. So when something's purchased, that's the cost, whether it was purchased 10 years ago or yesterday. The fixed assets are valued based on that historical or purchase cost. Non-audit services, we talked about the board and management being ultimately responsible for the financial statements. We do assist in the preparation of those financial statements as well as the notes to the financial statements, including the CFA and the data collection form, which are on the federal side relating to the single audit report. Now, we do perform some conversion journal entries to take the district's accounting records to make sure they're in line with the different bases of accounting that are used in the report. Some other required communications I did want to talk about tonight are that if we did have any disagreements with management, if we did feel like management was unwilling to provide certain representations, we'd be required to disclose those to you, and I'm happy to say that we did not have any of those instances. And then lastly, we always assess our independence. It's something that we take very seriously at our firm to make sure we are independent from the entity we're auditing. Then lastly, like I mentioned, all this will be in a governance communication letter that you will receive probably in the next week or two as we finalize the audit and the engagement. One item that I haven't talked about tonight that will be in that governance communication relates to uncorrected or corrected misstatements. We are required to disclose to you any misstatements that are above a certain threshold or above trivial or insignificant. We'll be disclosing that in the beginning balances for your compensated absence liabilities. That amount is misstated in your financial statements. It didn't rise to the level of needing to restate your financial statements from the prior year. And that's one thing we did talk about during the audit committee is materiality. Your district exceeded $1 billion in assets this year. A lot of accounting firms will use a materiality percentage of anywhere from 1 to 10%. We use usually a very conservative 1 to 2%. 2% of $1 billion is roughly $20 million. So pretty big numbers we're talking about when we talk about materiality and what we look at and what's reasonable for outside stakeholders. The reports we're issuing is the annual comprehensive financial report as well as the single audit report and the Uniform System of Financial Records or USFR compliance questionnaire. But tonight, like I said, we're really going to focus on the annual comprehensive financial statements. Page 1 is a transmittal letter from management to the readers of that financial statements. It's an unaudited section. Page 19 is your independent auditor's report related to the financial statements. We're issuing what we call an unmodified or clean audit report. The audit opinion or the independent auditor's report describes those responsibilities we just talked about between management and the auditors. And then on page 23 starts your management discussion and analysis section. This is a great year-to-year comparison of your financial statements. What happened last year versus this year and identifying significant changes. It is an unaudited section, but a section that we do help the district prepare as well. I did include a few excerpts from that section just to highlight what that section really entails. So your current assets, like we talked about, exceeded $1 billion. A lot of that is due to the bond issuance and the influx of cash and investments. With that bond issuance, you bring on a liability related to the bond, and that's the primary reason for the big increase in liabilities, but also due to an increase in the district's net pension liability, something that you don't necessarily have control over. It's an amount determined by the Arizona State Retirement System. When we talk about revenues and expenditures and the change from year to year, and I know it's been talked a lot about in your budget conversations, the lapse of the COVID funding is a big reason for the decrease in revenues. It's not the only reason, but it's the most significant reason. Your expenditures are more of a product of fluctuations with some of these, I don't want to call them unknowns, but estimates like the net pension liability estimate. Page 37 starts the audited portion of your financial statements, and it's your basic financial statements. There's two sets of financial statements here, and they work differently, but together they really tell the full picture. The first set is your government-wide financial statements, and those look at the district as a whole, one column, almost trying to take the approach of a public or private company rather than a government. The fund financial statements look at the buckets of funds that the district has and the monies divided by funds. The notes follow the financial statements and detail a lot of great information about the lines or transactions in the financial statements. So we talked about capital assets. Their valuation is all included in the notes to the financial statements. Page 81 starts your required supplementary information section. This information is unaudited but required by GASB, and it's just some B to A schedules as well as some required pension schedules. Page 87 is your supplementary information. So all the funds not presented in the basic financial statements are presented in your supplementary information section. That includes their budget to actual analysis as well. And then lastly, it's the statistical section. It starts on page 109. It's unaudited, but it's a lot of 10-year trend information that may be valuable to certain users of the financial statements. It's not just financial information, it's debt capacity, revenue capacity, demographics, economic information, as well as operating statistics. I think I may have lost the clicker, but I'm pretty much at the end of the presentation. Yeah, so the last slide I have here is really just thanking management of the district for their cooperation. This is a huge undertaking to do 3 different audits as well as the USFR compliance questionnaire. We touch all different departments. We look at student attendance, we look at transportation, we look at everything that's in this financial report, and it takes a lot to get through something like this in this type of time period. So definitely wanted to thank management for that. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to any other questions, comments, or concerns you have.
Governing board members, any questions? Yes, Ms. Shaw?
Thanks for your presentation. When you compile the annual comprehensive financial report, who did you speak to and how many folks did you speak to about allegations of fraud?
I'd have to look at our audit working papers to know the exact number of individuals. We definitely talked to a board member. We definitely talked to certain individuals in management. Probably usually management's anywhere from 2 to 5 individuals, and then other individuals that aren't involved in the actual financial statements that are outside. So it could be someone in your IT department, or it could be someone in your transportation department, because we want to cover all those bases. But I'd have to look at our our audit working papers to know the exact number and how they fall into that category.
Can you give me a ballpark range, like under 10? Over 10,
Yeah, it's
50?
under 10. It's probably between that 5 and 10 range, probably closer to 10 though.
I see. Okay. Because when you said like you can give us reasonable but not absolute assurance that the report is accurate and that we're remaining in compliance, it gives me pause hearing that you've spoken to 10 or less individuals with a district as large as we are, and then knowing that in years past your organization has missed some major details that ran over several $1 million that was withheld from teachers and other staff. So with that, could you tell me how many hours it took you to compile this report?
Just the financial statement report or just the overall audit and all the reports?
The overall audit.
We have a budget of 750 hours. I'd have to see where we stand right now, but I feel like that budgeted number of 750 hours is pretty accurate.
750 hours budgeted, and yet you spoke to under 10 people?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, Dr. Trujillo.
Expand on the work. The bulk of the audit is really auditing auditable documents, financial statements, receipts, invoices, looking at structures. Can you dive into that? And then also, you ran data analytics anytime you saw some financial irregularities where receipts didn't match to verify whether there was an irregularity or there was intent for fraud. Can you get into that a little bit more? Because I think I want the public and the board to have an idea of what an external audit is. It's not necessarily interviewing people. It's looking at records. It's looking at receipts. It's looking for red flags. It's running reports. I think if you can provide a little bit more detail, that would be appreciated.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Yes, Madam President, board members, part of the financial statement audit actually doesn't revolve around determining whether the district had fraud or not. We're issuing an opinion on whether the financial statements are reasonable and can be relied upon. That's the core of our audit. Now, part of that is looking into whether fraud occurred, but our audit is not designed to identify fraud per se. The audit's really designed to make sure the numbers in the financial statements are materially accurate, and that goes into looking at numerous invoices, purchase orders, personnel contracts, payroll registers, a lot of confirmations from various state and government organizations on revenue receipts. And as Dr. Trujillo mentioned, we do extensive work with data analytics. Part of that is just looking at employee information and comparing all that employee data to your vendors and all your vendor information and seeing what line up. What information lines up? Do you have a vendor and an employee that have the same phone number? That doesn't mean there's fraud, but potentially there's an employee that's being used as a vendor for your district, and we then need to assert whether there's a conflict of interest form and whether proper procurement procedures have been done, or is this a ghost vendor that's been created and there are fraudulent transactions? So yes, there is a limited number of individuals that we look at, but the idea is to do the bulk of the test work in terms of determining whether there's material fraud in the financial statements. And a lot of that revolves around using data analytics to identify some of these anomalies. Could be some vendor or employee addresses that match as well.
Thank you. You mentioned compliance of financial statements. Is it also in your purview to make sure that we are in compliance with the submission of other financial statements? For instance, the annual financial report.
Yes, Madam President, governing board members, Member Shaw, yes, we do look at part of the USFR compliance questionnaire. One of the questions is, did the district submit the annual financial report timely? And then we look at various things within that annual financial report. Do the amounts in the annual financial report for the budget match those of your most recent revised budget? Do the actual amounts in your annual financial report or AFR match those that are in your accounting records? There's various other procedures that we do, and that's all included in that uniform guidance or that USFR compliance questionnaire.
And what was your opinion about our annual financial report?
I think we did note some deficiencies. Since I'm not presenting on that specific report tonight and I don't have it in front of me, I'd have to go back and look at them, but I do believe that we noted that there was some differences between your accounting records in the AFR and your most recently revised budget in your AFR. And then I'd have to look into it a little more deeply. I know it was presented at the recent audit committee, and I know there were findings.
Okay, I bring that up because a constituent reported to me that they could not find the annual financial report on the Arizona Department of Education website, and it was due on October 31st, 2023. I looked and I couldn't find it either. I was wondering if you have anything to say about that.
No, I'd have to look to see that as well, but it is something we look for when we're doing our test work. We do make sure it's been properly published.
Okay, so that information is within your report. I noticed that it's a draft currently, and so it's not finalized yet, yet it's on the agenda as an action item.
Yes, this is a final draft. This is something that we plan on issuing once we get acceptance from the board tonight and receive the proper representation letters.
Any other questions? Okay. What are the wishes of the governing board?
I'll move the item.
I'll second. There's a motion by Dr. Shaw, seconded by myself. All those in favor say aye.
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 You need a roll call vote.
Roll call vote, please.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes 3-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to consent agenda. Items 6.2 through 6.9. Does anyone want to pull anything? I will go ahead and move consent agenda.
I'll second.
Consent has been moved by myself and seconded by Dr. Shaw. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Item number 7.1 is public hearing, revised classroom site fund performance-based compensation plan for school year 2024-2025. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, governing board members, tonight it's the annual consideration of the district's pay for performance plan, the result of collaborative work between the district, represented proudly by Employee Relations, and the Tucson Education Association's Prop 301 committee. As we do every year, we meet, we come to an agreement on any changes, any modifications, and then of course, after the presentation, we go directly into the public hearing where members of the community will have an opportunity to speak, make comments on the proposed pay for performance plan, and then after that, the board in item 8.1 would entertain a motion to approve. So I know that we have TEA President Mr. Jim Byrne and our Employee Relations Director Maricela Mesa set to team up. Mr. Byrne sends his regards. I think he was otherwise engaged in another commitment this evening. So going it alone is our Employee Relations Director Maricela Mesa.
Thank you so much, Dr. Trujillo, President Ekstrom, governing board members. What we are asking for today is approval of the 24-25 performance pay plan. The Classroom Site Fund Committee is included in the consensus agreement, and we meet every year and we look at the fund and the performance pay plan. It looks substantially similar to last year, very not many updates, and it was voted, ratified upon the eligible individuals who will receive the money, and we are asking for approval.
Did anyone submit any speaker cards, Ms. Barboa? Okay, so then we will move on to item 8.1, review, approve, and adopt the revised performance-based compensation plan for school year 24-25. Any questions for Ms. Meza?
I'll move the item.
I'll second. Item's been moved by Ms. Shaw, seconded by myself. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Item 8.3 is Governing Board Policy IJND, Artificial Intelligence Use in Education, second reading. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, we have consideration of the second read, which tonight is an ask for action. And I'd like to welcome our Associate General Counsel, Mr. Michael Aronoff. A brief refresher on the policy being proposed, and of course, any themes or trends identified in the public comments, which of course have already been shared with the public. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Aronoff.
So I'm
being
going
assisted
to
by
turn it
Tracy
over to
Rowley.
Tracy Rowley,
Okay.
yeah.
Director for Instructional Technology. All right.
Thank
Welcome
you.
back, Tracy.
Thank you so much. I got it. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening, President Ekstrom, governing board members, Dr. Trujillo, Mr. Ross, and all the people watching me in person, online, and later in the recording of this meeting. My name is Tracy M. Rowley, and I'm here tonight to speak about our artificial intelligence. We were just here over a month ago, and I began by acknowledging that we were in uncharted territory, especially for a school district, and I asked people to have an open mind. I'd like to propose that there's been a shift. We are in chartered waters now. More people are aware of AI, and more people are using AI. Personally, since our last discussion, it seems like AI is constantly in the news and professional journals, and I get emails all the time, and I wonder if you've experienced the same increase in awareness as well. So we stand here for a second read of the AI policy that we proposed in February of 2025, asking for the approval of the governing board. And I'd like to reiterate, AI is here. This is not about whether we want it or not. People are using it. It's not going away. And educational leadership has always demanded navigating complex challenges, but today's AI landscape presents a unique turning point. To ensure responsible and effective integration, we must move proactively with intention and using a systematic framework. And this means having clear policies and guidelines to inform and guide, ensuring ethical and effective AI and integration for our students, parents, teachers, and staff. Again, my name is Tracy Rowley. I'm the Senior Director of Education Technology and Online Education. I am also here with Robbie Hamadi, who's the Executive Director of Technology Services, Chris Anderson, who's the Senior Management of Application and Data Services, and Jules O'Haron, who's the Program Coordinator of Strategic Project Management Office. And they're still there. So my agenda, I'm just going to quickly review the definition of generative AI, talk a little bit about the AI task force, the guidelines, the proposed AI policy, and then the next steps, where are we proposing to go from here. So if you look back in time, there have been many technological advances that have had a significant impact not only on society, but on the educational environment. Multiple books have been written on this subject, but to keep my time short, I'll simply point out that with each of these advancements, to put it simply, schools and teachers had to adjust. Policies were written, lesson plans were adapted, district operations were improved or changed. And I'd like to point out that the concept of artificial intelligence has actually been around since the 50s, but the newest iteration, which is generative AI, is the one that this policy truly addresses, and that's the one that kind of, I'll say it crashed on scene in November of 2022. When we use the term AI, we're referring to these three types, at least that's what there is right now. Reactive AI is the most basic type of artificial intelligence. It operates solely on the present moment, reacting to current situations without any memory of the past or understanding of the future. And examples include devices that are in your homes right now, smart speakers, and many of which we use on a daily basis. Predictive AI uses data or algorithms with machine learning to forecast future outcomes. Basically, predictive AI gathers tons of data, finds patterns, and makes predictions. In Tucson Unified, predictive AI has been around for years. It is embedded in many of our online educational programs that are used every day in our classrooms. And these programs mainly focus on personalized instruction and skill development in math and reading. Some examples would be iExcel and iReady. Generative AI is trained using massive amounts of data, like images or text, and it learns using the underlying patterns and structures to generate new content that is similar to the data it was trained on. But that's the game changer, is the content is unique and original. So as a reminder, Blaine Young, our Chief Operating Officer, who's retiring on Friday, realized the need for an intentional plan, the need to be proactive, and he asked Chris, Jules, and myself to form a task force. We put out multiple emails and requests to join us. We were looking for diverse voices to provide their input and perspectives, and people from just about every part of the district, including people from human resources, technology services, student services, teacher mentors, language acquisition, etc., some of who were parents, along with even a community member. We started meeting in May of 2024, and we put in many hours, hard work, and we started by splitting up into 3 subcommittees, which was the students and parents, the instructional staff or teachers, and then staff outside the classroom. And they put in a lot of time and effort, and we had a lot of difficult conversations. And as I moved to presenting their work, just ask that you honor the work of these people. And some of them, I hope, are watching online tonight. So here's all the leaders, and then here's all the people who joined us. And I have another slide. So the 3 subcommittees started with creating, editing, and ultimately finalizing the AI guidelines, which have been provided to TUSD staff and posted internally for reference. Using the guidelines, the AI task force then created the proposed AI policy that we present tonight for a second read. Concurrently, we have been working on an AI public-facing website to educate and inform our parents and constituents, and updating our TUSD digital citizens curriculum to include AI. And then finally, we just met last week to evaluate and review each of the public comments, and we truly appreciated the comments that people took the time to submit. The AI task force is not proposing any revisions as this time, as we think the proposed policy addressed each of the questions and concerns. If you will recall, the AI guidelines provide principles for the use of AI by students, teachers, and other staff. The guidelines are much more specific, offer recommendations and best practices, and also detail applicable laws and regulations from the state and national government. The task force envisions and does recommend that the guidelines are reviewed, as they are designed to be flexible and malleable, and the proposed AI policy is based on the guidelines. So the proposed AI policy that we brought to you in February, now we have before you for a second read, outlines acceptable AI use, including educational purpose. All AI technology shall be implemented to support TUSD's educational mission, enhance student learning, improve instructional practices, and streamline district operations. Human oversight: AI shall not replace human educators, administrators, or staff. AI must augment human judgment, with all decisions involving AI subject to human review and approval. Ethical use: all AI systems must align with the district's value of fairness, equity, and inclusivity. AI systems must be regularly evaluated for potential bias or discriminatory outcomes. Regulatory compliance: all AI use within TUSD must comply with applicable federal and state regulations, including FERPA, COPA, IDEA, SIPA, Section 504, and any other relevant laws. And data privacy and security: the district shall not use AI systems that compromise personally identified information, PII, or other sensitive data. And all AI platforms must undergo a privacy and security assessment before adoption. And of importance, we have included a section about academic integrity and acceptable use for students, and have detailed that students must adhere to specific guidelines or instruction provided by their school administrator, teacher, or teachers regarding the use of generative AI tools. And then violations of using AI, depending on how it's used, can be addressed in accordance with the student code of conduct. For teachers, the policy details that AI tools may be used to support instructional practices, but shall not replace teachers in delivering curriculum or assessing student performance. And teachers are responsible for reviewing all AI-generated content before using in the classroom, and teachers may only use district-approved AI tools with students. So the next steps, we're continuing to finalize the AI website. We're working with communications on that to provide information about AI and the policy for students, parents, and staff. And we are working to update the digital citizenship curriculum to include AI. We also recognize that AI, how to use AI as a college and career-ready goal for our students. According to a recent article in Forbes magazine, AI is one of the fastest evolving fields, and it's already impacting job markets and transforming careers. Therefore, we intentionally and strategically finalize the process to unblock teacher-requested AI platforms for use by high school students after critical evaluations of the AI platform following all applicable laws and privacy regulations. And then finally, I think this is most important, is that high quality training has to continue for teachers, staff, and district level personnel. We recognize that significant training and support for teachers must continue. The integration of AI into education necessitates that teachers receive comprehensive training to adapt their teaching methodologies and pedagogy. And this is crucial for several reasons. Teachers need to comprehend what AI can and cannot do, what they should and should not do within the educational context. Includes recognizing AI's potential for personalized learning and content generation, as well as limitations regarding human interactions and ethical considerations. AI tools can significantly alter how lessons are delivered and how students engage with the content, but teachers must learn how to effectively integrate AI into their existing framework, ensuring that the technology enhances rather than replaces them. In this AI-infused world, students must develop and are already developing strong critical thinking skills to evaluate information generated by AI, and teachers need to be equipped to guide students in discerning reliable sources, identifying biases, and understanding the ethical implications of AI. And teachers also need to learn how to instruct students in using AI tools responsibly and ethically. Teachers play a crucial role in equipping students with the skills and knowledge they need to thrive in this ever-evolving landscape. And with the skills and knowledge they need to thrive in this landscape. In essence, training teachers to navigate this AI-infused world is essential for ensuring that technology is used to enhance rather than hinder the learning process. So last month, I brought an elephant to highlight concerns from parents and teachers on the subject of AI, because there are some really big elephants in this room when it comes to AI. First, the top concern is that students are going to cheat. We believe the Student Code of Conduct emphasis on academic integrity can be applied towards the use of AI by students. Second, there's the concern that teachers are using AI for lesson planning and staff are using it as part of their job responsibilities, but people are already using AI. It's already embedded into almost every online tool and website that's out there. The policy and guidelines emphasize that teachers and staff are responsible for reviewing and vetting AI-generated content. And third, there is concern that AI tools will replace humans. However, the policy is clear that AI cannot and should not replace human oversight or decision-making. So to ensure AI implementation, our policies and guidelines stress ethical considerations, awareness of limitations, the necessity of vetting AI. Given that organizations around the country are already navigating this new AI world, TUSD has the opportunity to demonstrate leadership in Arizona. By being proactive, we can provide our students, parents, teachers, staff, stakeholders, and constituents with policies that align with our values and allow us to actively shape our future. So we are ready to hear some questions and see what we can address for you all. There's some big elephants, right? It's like, where do we start? Where do we start?
Mr. Romero.
So real quick, this question is actually for Rob Ross. Legal, excuse me. So I understand this policy is clear that it's not going to replace, humans. But if we have a policy like this, we have another board that comes on in later on, they can say, red line, replace humans, and we can replace humans if we get a majority vote on the board at a later time, correct?
Mr. Romero, all policies are subject to board revision.
Thank you.
Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, President Ekstrom. Thank you, Ms. Rowley, for the presentation again tonight. It is great to kind of hear what's going on and what we're doing as a district. I'm glad we have so many different voices involved with the creation of this policy, and want to thank everyone listening for all the comments. There were a lot of thoughtful comments that came in from the community.
I agree.
And a lot of questions as well. I think there's a lot of questions about what the future looks like with how disruptive AI is going to be. I appreciate you really focusing on the training piece of it and all the training that's already happened and what needs to go into making sure that our teachers, our staff, our students, our parents as well, and make sure we include parents in that training so that we know what to expect from our own children and what they're doing in terms of AI, what access they're having to AI, what their data is being used for, and so we know what kind of homework assignments, how we can support our kids when they're bringing home assignments and they're using their tablets and other things to create things. So I think including parents in training, if that hasn't already been done, would be really beneficial as well in terms of, and it's not going to be something super active, but just information out to us with newsletters and things that already come in from our principals, from our schools would be really helpful.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's why we're working so hard on the AY website that's be outward facing, and it will be for as you described, for parents, for constituents, for our stakeholders, so that we can share what we are doing and what are the definitions, how is it being used, and provide that for our people, our stakeholders. But
even more proactive, like I think the ones I read the most as a parent are coming from the principal. I read the principal newsletters every week. That would be a great forum if you're working on communication strategies with our director of communications and our site leaders. I'm not sure, other parents on the board. That's the one I read the most. It's going to be the principal newsletters back home, and that'd be great to have some information embedded into those newsletters to learn more about how this is affecting my own kids' educations.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. Was there any revisions to this policy since you were last here?
We did not. We looked at the comments. We had some hard discussions where some people brought up, what about this, what about that? And we felt that the policies, the way that it was written, could be applied for any of those questions, or that the questions that came up or the concerns were addressed in the policies or in the guidelines, because the guidelines also are more extensive. So we felt like that what people, comments that people had in those situations that we talked about, that those still could be covered under the policy as it's written.
Okay. Yeah, because I made some comments that I'm not sure were addressed. One being on general guidelines for AI use. It's page 2, I believe. And item 2, human oversight, or no, excuse me, it's page 1. Item 1 under general guidelines for AI use. I don't know if you could bring that up, Jean, in the policy. But it reads, educational purpose, AI technology shall be implemented to support TUSD's educational mission, enhance student learning, improve instructional practices, and streamline district operations. I believe I suggested that we remove that shall phrase and instead put may. Shall is a mandatory word, and I don't want teachers or staff to feel like they must implement AI technologies in their classrooms. That's in the guidelines or the policy, Jean, if you want to bring that up. What more, I do feel that this policy isn't explicit enough with the grades that will be utilizing AI. I think that, as you said, AI is not going anywhere, and that's pretty clear, unfortunately. But I feel like other grades utilizing AI are more appropriate than others. For instance, high school students, I can see how that can and maybe should be implemented, just so everyone, can have a general understanding of how AI is used and how they can implement it either in their personal life or in their work environment after high school. But for elementary school students, I don't feel that AI is really appropriate. In the art world, if you're classically trained, they always say that you have to learn the rules before you break them or bend them. And so because we have such a serious issue with reading and writing and math in our school, I really worry that if we kind of open up the floodgates and allow students of any grade level to start to explore these programs or like learn how to use them. Like, you know, it could just make this situation worse for us. Like when I was growing up, we started using spell check. And, you know, people had their reservations about spell check back then. And, you know, because of spell check, there are still words that I cannot spell without spell check. I think we had a comment earlier today in the call to the audience, and they said something like, what did you say? It's in here somewhere. Basically,
he said that people don't know people's phone numbers.
That's true.
And I think that's true. Kids don't know how to read
Right.
clocks anymore. That's true. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it will like limit student confidence, and they'll become more reliant on technologies as they move forward. And I really do think it's gonna like make our brains just less functional because we will always rely on it. We won't exercise our brain. It is a muscle, isn't it? So I do wish that this policy can be more explicit as far as what grade levels we can or should allow. I think as a board, you know, we have the power to designate certain grades to be like AI free. Maybe it's implemented in the programs that we already have, but as far as teaching them how to, you know, generate phrases or whatever, it's however it's going to be used, we really don't know because it's not explicit. There's no programs that were saying we can have this, we can't have this. I know you, like, in your presentation, you kind of allude to it, but I do wish that this policy was more explicit.
Dr. Shaw?
Thank you, President Ekstrom. Thank you, Board Member Shaw, for mentioning some of those concerns. I think that's really embedded. I mean, it had to be embedded in the training that we do. You know, AI is everywhere. You know, anytime we do a Google search, we get AI-generated responses. And so to limit it and say a kindergartner, you know, can't do AI, so you can't even do a Google search, which I think is going to be really problematic if we limit it that far. But I think the training in terms of what's appropriate, what's age appropriate. You know, I don't want my kids doing and generate AI when they should be learning how to write and read on paper and pencil, which I know they're doing. Their teachers even teaching them cursive this quarter, which I'm excited about, and going beyond the curriculum to do that for my first graders, which is pretty cool. And so I think figuring out how we're finding what's age appropriate, training our teachers, training our parents on age appropriateness is going to be important. Because AI, I mean, we'll put our head in the sands if we say we can keep our elementary kids away from AI. It's everywhere. Every program they use, every search they use, all these educational programs are coming in and differentiating their education, you know, using AI backgrounds and things. It's everywhere now. We got to figure out how we're going to do this and keep our kids healthy and safe and learning with everything that's around them in AI right now. This is everywhere. President Ekstrom, could I?
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to address something that came up before we got into the sort of wisdom about grades and whether there are cutoffs. Board Member Shaw, you'd mentioned whether we had brought revisions to the policy, and I did just want to clarify. So this is the second read. At the first read, the board voted to approve this version of the policy for posting, and so that is the version that we're bringing back because that's the version you all approved for comment. And certainly, if the board wants to see changes to language in that, you have the room and discretion to do that. But I did want to clarify that's why this is the version we're bringing back. This is because that was the board vote.
I only see one teacher on the member task force.
Yes, we
Was he middle school? I know it's Maribel McCorkle, so K through 8.
He's K-8, that's correct.
So what grades does he teach?
My understanding is he's more of a he teaches 6th through 8th grade primarily, but I know that he does have interactions with K through 8. Mm-hmm. We did have teacher mentors who work with multiple teachers across many schools, and so they also brought their voice to the conversation.
We don't know what grade level those teacher mentors were.
I am not sure. From hearing them talk, I know that they're assigned to different schools, but I'm not sure what grades. Mm-hmm. We also had people from language acquisition that work with different grades as well. So we tried to have a diversity of voices at the table.
And I appreciate that. I think maybe having the voice of an elementary school teacher would have been something to consider, especially with Ms. Shaw's concerns. Yes, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. And then I know there's a lot in this policy about monitoring and evaluating, but still there's not much of an explanation on how or who this evaluation and monitoring will be done. It's unclear if the monitoring will be done by AI itself. And so, that kind of gives me pause as well. And I mentioned this last time, but this policy states that AI will not replace any teacher, staff, and administrator. But we're already replacing people like in the communication department when before it was a human voice and now it's an AI voice. That's replacing a human. And personally, when I hear like an AI voice in an ad, it's like I don't even want to hear it. It's not persuasive. It doesn't make me like want to, I guess, go there.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not a robot voice, but
no, we haven't used robot voices, or we haven't replaced anything with AI for any of our production or any of the things that we do in our department.
Because I heard a YouTube ad, and it was a very short one, and it really...
If it might have been produced by an outside, maybe a school produced it and shared it through YouTube, but in our department, all our ads, all our videos are human voices.
Okay. So it's things like that, like how are we going to monitor that? How are we going to monitor whether a teacher, gets her or his curriculum through like an AI generated curriculum service?
We are depending on the teachers to, that's why it's very important that they should be vetting if they're vetting it, that they're looking at what the output is if they are going to use it. So we're also putting on that site administrators may also be doing that. And I do know that curriculum instruction has also been training people on how to use AI for helping them with guiding questions, things like that. But again, I think the bottom line always comes back to it's got to be the person who's using AI, it's putting in the prompt, who's reading over it, evaluating it, and vetting it. And that's the critical piece to it, is that there still has to be humans. Somebody is evaluating and monitoring it, and maybe it's the person who's using it. I know when I use AI, I always read over what it says. I never just copy and paste. But have I seen other people do it? I have. And I was on an award committee, and somebody, you could tell, copied and pasted their answers, and we threw out their submission right away. We could tell. So I think it's a lot of it is dependent on the people themselves using it. Yes, Mr. Romero.
So let me just make sure I understand you correct. So the teachers get to choose which ones that they're going to be using for their classes?
We do not have any, at this point, we do not have any controls or any blocks for staff or adult use of AI tool, of AI tools. We don't put blocks on that for staff. We do for our students, and it's 100% blocked for our students right now.
Okay, but I guess kind of the point I'm looking to do, if, say, this were to pass, each individual teacher would have their personal choice of what AI to use in their classroom. It's not consistent across the district.
At this point, that's the way it is, yes.
And if a teacher wanted to opt out of it, they have that opportunity?
Yes, they just wouldn't use it. Is that what am I understanding you correctly? Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I can't tell you that in our trainings, we absolutely, there's a few that we that we like better than others because they're closed systems and we have they're not open out for the world, and we actively encourage our staff, all staff, to use those systems and not. Actually, we don't encourage people, and we discourage people from using ChatGPT in our trainings.
Yeah, so I would think if we were to even consider this, to have district approved AI programs that they can use versus someone coming up with the latest, greatest, this is a new one, and having say something like, hey, I found this new one, can I give it to someone in technical, have them make sure that it fills all the parameters with that. Again, I'm still on the side that's leaning against this. I understand you say we're in uncharted waters here, and I know on one of your other slides, it talks about, the improvements like cell phones. Yes, they made a huge improvement in our life, but now some of the things we have, our students are carrying their cell phones around in class. And I've gone to some high schools, you'll see the kid in class on their device. It's a bad thing at that point. They're texting someone else, hey, meet me at the bathroom, da-da-da-da-da. What other negative things could happen by implementing things like this? These are just things that I look at. I don't want to just see the frosting on the cupcake, what's inside of the cupcake itself, or what some other things that could happen by putting in this policy. So again, not having a consistent certain AI programs in the district, I think that would be something that would at least need to be looked at also.
Dr. Shaw?
Thank you, President Ekstrom. I appreciate the concerns, but I think we're thinking about this the wrong way. Like, AI is embedded in everything. You have a teacher that has some kind of text from another language and they want to translate for their class. They put it into a translator on the website. That's using AI to translate it. So I don't think it's like on the district's behalf to say hey, we can use these AI programs. Or not, everything has AI embedded in it now. You go to your Gmail and you start typing a Gmail or any kind of Outlook mail, and you start typing an email, you get these automatic responses. That's all AI generated. And so I think we're thinking about this wrong, saying we need to have a list of approved AI functions. AI is embedded in everything we're doing right now. And I think this policy, while not perfect, I think is a good first step to put some guidelines in place, kind of set some standards in terms of what our expectations are as a district for how we're going to incorporate AI, which is embedded in everything that we have technology. If we're using technology, if we're using anything internet-based, we're using AI probably in some way with everything we're using right now. And so I think this is a great first start. I think we're going to get some good feedback over the next year plus as we're implementing this policy and seeing what tweaks it might need. And I'm ready to move the item tonight.
I just would feel better if we were to bring this back and make sure that the word that Ms. Shaw wanted out is out, and maybe perhaps you could speak to an elementary school teacher to see how they feel about using that in elementary school, and then just bring it back clean so that we can then discuss that. Is that okay with the governing board? Yes, Mr. Romero.
I would rather not just one elementary teacher. I'd like to get a group of grade school or elementary teachers.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Shaw.
I agree with that, and thank you for moving to table this for a later date. Not only more teachers, but I didn't notice any parents who commented, and I don't have the list of the people on the task force in front of me, so I'm not sure how many parents, if any, are represented there. Just to Dr. Shaw's comment, I think you're being a little reductive about AI. I don't think any of us are thinking no Google searches. It's the new generation of AI that I think we're all concerned about. And when this does come back, I would like more the policy to be more fleshed out, especially that monitoring and evaluation part, because as you said, it's up to the user to do their own evaluation and monitoring, and that's just not going to cut it. And then I would like to also have some language in place about evaluating, if it's being helpful for our students in a way that is going to encourage them or promote proficiency. Let's see. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay.
President Ekstrom?
Yes,
I'm sorry
yes.
if I could interject. I do want to just clarify process-wise, and then one piece of clarification, sort of big picture-wise. In terms of process, happy to make changes to the policy before we put it out and bring it back. But procedurally at this point, this is the first read that the board approved, and so we'd want some sort of board action to, if there are specific wordsmithing things that you would like to see, that the board do that to the policy that you've already approved for posting. And then I do, just sort of in response to Board Member Romero's comments about, I guess I want to clarify sort of big picture that if we don't have a policy, which at the moment we don't, then we're sort of acting in the absence of policy, which makes it more of a free-for-all. So I think the district as a whole, people want some guidance. So whatever that guidance turns out to be, I guess I would just encourage you not to say, let's just not have a policy, but to be specific about what we want as a district, because it is out there and people are using it. And so we want our staff, we want our students to have guidance that we can communicate and be consistent about.
I'm for sure not saying that we don't need a policy, but I do think teachers need to be asked and vetted, and that hasn't occurred. So if it comes back with the same wording, then fine. But if it's like, hey, most of these K through 6th or 5th teachers saying we don't want to implement whatever is not chat GPT. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah. I would like to hear what they have to say, because I do feel that my daughter, as a 4th grader, should be reading and should be able to write her own sentences without having to Google search it or use AI.
I apologize, I wasn't clear. We, according to COPA guidelines, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, we will not open this for under 13 because of the COPA guidelines. So elementary students, middle school students will not have AI as an option for them to use, such as a Gemini. But because it's over 13, under 13, we have that break. So we're only talking about opening up AI for use in high schools that teachers can request and will be evaluated, looking at all the policies, looking at the privacy guidelines, and only then would those be opened up for only high school use. The beautiful thing is we have the umbrella system, so we can block it.
I see.
Yeah, so under, absolutely.
Does that make you feel better, Ms. Shaw?
No, because it's not explicitly stated, like who knows about
Okay.
COPA. I see it at the very bottom, but like it needs to be stated explicitly. And then I would also just like more language to the evaluation and monitoring. And the question I forgot to ask was to legal. Is this policy based off of some policy with ASBA or another school district's AI policy?
I can tell you that ASBA does not have model policy, so we've not used that. I mean, Ms. Riley can talk more about sort of where the language we have in there came from.
We modeled off of Northern Arizona University has a model, a framework, guidelines for people. So we modeled that. University of Arizona has some guidelines. We've also talked to a lot of school districts. Truly, there isn't anybody in Southern Arizona for us to talk to, but we did look at Agua Fria, Deer Valley, Chandler, and Mesa. And we looked at what they have, and we modeled a lot. We looked very extensively on their policies, their guidelines, and we had a lot of conversations with them, and a lot of things are modeled off of those, but we don't have anyone in Southern Arizona to look at. We're the first.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think all the points that we've made would be helpful for if this comes back. And also, I was just briefly looking through the code of conduct, and I searched with like the word artificial, and I couldn't find it in the code of conduct. Perhaps there is something there that speaks to the use of AI, like plagiarism, but I think we need to kind of build both of these policies together.
And we did include in the AI policy the discussion about the code of conduct applying, but you're absolutely right. The code of conduct itself does not at this point talk about use of AI. Excuse me, I wouldn't really have a reference at this point for it to do that. I agree that they do have to sort of be read together.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I will move to table the item so that it includes or let me just, I don't know what I'm doing. Want to table the item, but we also want to include the age restriction in here, that it's 13 and under won't be able to use, and then the removal of the word shall, right, in
Number 1 for general guidelines.
number 1. And then you can come back to us at the next meeting if that's okay. So my motion is to table.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-1 with 3-0-1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 9.1 is purchase and sale agreement with Ascent Property Company, LLC, for properties at the Morrow Education Center with authorization for the operations program manager to execute the agreement. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Ekstrom, board members, members of the community, we are here with a purchase sale agreement for the Morrow Center, affectionately known throughout the years as 1010. The sale of 1010 being proposed tonight is not for the entirety of the property, but is for the northern phase of the property, which would include everything north of 10th, largely inclusive, almost inclusive of all the parking area that's there north of the building. And I'd like to bring up Bryant Nodine, who'll walk us through the particulars of the agreement.
President Ekstrom, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo, Council Ross. Maria, could you bring up the third from the last page? We'll look at the aerial photo there. Okay, so I'm really pleased to be with you this evening to talk about an important milestone that will help create a more suitable, functional building for staff. And on top of that, it will create a consolidated services so that it's easier access for our field staff, teachers, and staff at the sites, and also for the public. So we're looking here at, can you go ahead and move it up, Maria? Excellent. Okay. There are really two different parcels here on the Morrow Ed Center. And this one that we're talking about is the first phase of the sale. And it's the small house that's on the southwest corner of the parking lot, and also the rest of the whole parking lot. It also includes a cell tower that's noted there. It's a purchase, the agreement that you have before you has a purchase price of $13 million. It acknowledges that the buyer intends to build a residential development, and that will be, and it says, in substantial conformance with the Sunshine Mile Overlay District, which was really put together with the city and the neighbors and Tucson Unified. So it includes those two things. On top of that, it addresses the cell tower by putting together early in the process an agreement on how the cell tower will be relocated on the property. That we're hoping we can do in the first 60 days of due diligence. But that agreement then will carry forward through the rest of the process. The rest of it really is a very typical purchase and sale agreement. It looks at a due diligence period of 120 days. It looks at escrow deposits that ensure that the future buyer will continue to move forward with the project because they become non-refundable at certain key points. And it gets the whole process to closing in anywhere from, depending on extensions and an escrow deposits, from 11 months to 17 months. So it's a fairly quick process. When you consider that a whole development plan has to be done for the property. So really that's it. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Romero.
Real quick, the building that's on the northwest side, what is that?
That's called The Rock. It's a nightclub.
Okay, so is this other company planning on buying that property there, or they're going to keep that thing there?
They haven't discussed that.
Okay.
It has been discussed in the past with other potential buyers, but it's not in part of this agreement.
Okay. Did we sell that to them way back when? Or
Oh, no, we never purchased it. This we purchased back in the 40s, 30s even maybe, 40s and 50s. And they were small residential lots. Some of them hadn't been developed. Some of them obviously had. There's that house that's on there. And we picked them up bit by bit. And then we picked up the northern portion after the one on the northwest corner had already been developed.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll move the item.
I'll second. Motion has been made by Dr. Shaw and seconded by myself. Roll call, please.
Ms. Shaw?
No.
Mr. Romero?
Yes.
Dr. Ravi?
Yes.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Yes, motion passes 3-1. Thank you. Next is item 10.1, desegregation budget study session number 3. First, we'll start with the magnet department. Dr. Trujillo?
Yes, members of the governing board, members of the public, we are continuing with our third study session on desegregation funded departments. Tonight, we're very excited to present the next 3 departments that will be presenting their budget proposals to the governing board. We start with magnet, then we'll go ahead and we'll go with family and community engagement, multicultural education. As I always like to do before we start presentations for those watching, our current financial situation in the desegregation budget has us at about a $3.5 million deficit. The district collects $63 million in secondary or in desegregation levied taxes to support desegregation funded programs as a result of the almost 40-year court order desegregation programming that was imposed on the district. Because the amount of dollars are capped at the 2008 level of $63 million, we are unable to levy any more. But the cost of the employees for all of our desegregation programs, raises in compensation, increased health costs, additional staff members to meet programmatic needs, have our expenditures going higher than the static $63 million. So the task for all of our desegregation funded department leaders is to work with their departments to create a budget that's balanced. All of the budget proposals are posted and available for public comment. You can hit the link on our board docs public agenda item, and they're open for your comments, as the governing board will not be voting on a desegregation budget until mid-June. And so with that, we'll kick it off with our next department, one of our largest departments, the Magnet Department. I want to welcome our Senior Director for Magnet in TUSD, and that's Cameron Terabati. Welcome.
Good evening, I'm Cameron Terabati. I'm the Senior Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusivity, overseeing 12 incredible Magnet programs. So thank you, Board, Madam President, Council, and Dr. Trujillo. First, I just want to communicate who our Magnet schools are. So we have 12 incredible, dynamic school communities with 12 principals, amazing teachers, Magnet coordinators, and those communities are as follows. Bonillas, traditional Magnet. Borton, systems thinking and project-based learning Magnet. Carrillo, communication and arts Magnet. Davis, bilingual Magnet. Dodge, traditional middle school Magnet. Drachman, Montessori K-8, and one of the only public Montessori schools in Southern Arizona. Holiday, fine arts Magnet. Mansfeld, STEM Plus middle school Magnet. Palo Verde High School STEAM Magnet. Roskridge, bilingual K-8. Of course, Tucson High and Tully Gate Magnet. Let's get into just why magnet schools exist, period. From the 20,000-foot view, magnet schools were essentially created and grounded in the space of educational equity. And what their real true DNA is in integration. And for magnet schools, what that really means is making sure that we don't just allow students of different races to go to school together. We ask them to learn together, to break bread together, to eat together, right? One of the things I think we fundamentally believe in is that the ills of society are the ills of a classroom, and if we can have a role in helping close not only academic disparity, but social disparity, creating opportunities for all, then we've done our job. We are the Tucson Unified School District representation of school choice. And we do all this through a thematic-based approach, and that is our vehicle to engage students and learners and really do our work. So you heard me use this language of theme. Well, what a theme is, it's a specialized curriculum. It's a specialized vehicle of instruction. So from some schools, their theme is just fine arts, while others is STEM or STEAM. For schools like Davis and Rossridge, it's access to two-way dual language programming. And what we know is it enhances learning and it does boost academic achievement. There's much result in data that highlights and underscores that reality. For us, in school year 24-25, we're proud of some things departmentally, right? We're very proud of 12 incredible principals. We're very proud of the magnet coordinators that serve those 12 communities. We're proud of the 7,300 students that attend a magnet school in this district. So what we have done in a short amount of time is we've doubled the amount of Magnet Schools of America certified schools. When we got to this department, and there's a mighty group of 4 of us departmentally, we had 4 MSA or Magnet Schools of America certified schools. That number now sits at 8. When we arrived to this department, there were 4 magnet schools that were receiving national merit awards and recognition through the Magnet Schools of America certifying and merit award winning body. That number now sits at 7. We're able to write and receive a $10,000 grant for Palo Verde High School for their drama department. We held a Magnet Business Symposium, and this is the 3rd year we've done it, but we did it a little bit different this year. In the past, we said, hey, come look at our schools, because we want you to know what our schools are like, because we want to partner with you. And ultimately, we want to see different ways in which you can serve our community, our schools. This year, we flipped the script. We said, how can we collaborate? What are the demands and the needs of industry? How can we align what we do instructionally through our curriculum, through our vehicle of theme, to meet the demands and the needs that are just real in the 21st century? We had an incredible delegation of school leaders and educators from Korea come and visit Tucson High and Davis and Rossridge. And one of the things we fundamentally believe in is that, yeah, it's hard to recruit and retain teachers. It's hard to recruit and retain site leaders and principals. That's just a reality. So we have to do everything we can to make the world of being a teacher or a principal or a magnet coordinator fun and engaging. So we held our first ever pickleball tournament. It was funded by EEF. A shout out to Dawn Bell and her team for making this happen. And a shout out to the Palo Verde team. My goodness, they are some pickleball players. It was incredible. And finally, one of the things that we're really proud of is our work around instructional leadership teams. And departmentally, how much we're pouring into that and what that means for learning. But I don't want you to hear me just speak to it. I want you to see it. So in front of you, you have some data points. You have 3 years worth of data, 3rd through 8th grade. The dark salmon color, what that is, that's magnet proficiency. Magnet proficiency on the AASA state assessment. The lighter salmon color, that's the district as a whole, right? So you can clearly see in school year 21-22, 22-23, 23-24, magnet schools as an aggregate have outperformed the district in ELA. The same thing is true for math, right? Again, in the DNA of magnet is thematic learning. In the DNA of magnet is working to close subgroup achievement gaps. In the DNA of magnet is making sure systems are in place to look at instructional practice, to look at data, and ensure learning occurs on a campus. And the data proves that it's working. We're not perfect. We haven't reached our goal yet, but we're making incredible progress. And the schools and their respective leaders are helping to make this a reality for kids, helping to make that data set a reality. When we shift to high school, and I separated these out because the high school assessment it's a completely different assessment. It's the ACT Horizon. But again, in ELA, we have two incredible high schools, Tucson High Magnet School and Palo Verde. Students are doing better in terms of proficiency. Again, you have school year 21-22, 22-23, 23-24. The same thing is true for math. And I'll echo the same thing. We know we have work to do. And our 12 leaders, who are absolutely incredible, those principals, are doing the work every single day. But the impact cycle is the language I would use. It takes time and energy and effort. But so far, the data for us looks good. You heard me talk a little bit about instructional coaching and instructional leadership teams. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about what that is. Because when we look at that data set, we know that the vehicle of thematic learning helps us achieve those results. But what's driving that are these cycles of instructional coaching that are done by instructional leadership teams. An instructional leadership team is a team on any campus in this district, but in Magnet, it's especially different because it's inclusive of the Magnet coordinator. It's inclusive of the site principal, assistant principal, a CSP, all with this mission of delivering quality instructional coaching specific to thematic learning, specific to evidence-based practices in terms of what good instruction looks like, specific to data-driven instructional practices, right? And when we do that in a cycle, we know it increases student achievement. We know it impacts teacher confidence. We know that it really equates to sustained growth. We know that it creates collaborative learning opportunities in communities in our schools. And I'm just going to give you an example. Think about an athlete for a second, right? Could be any athlete, but I'm going to pick on a basketball player. We don't teach someone to bounce a ball once and expect them to play basketball. We don't show an artist or musician how to play a chord on a guitar one time and expect them to be Jimi Hendrix. In the space of physicians, we don't say, hey, everything that you're going to learn is in the classroom. Now, go be a doctor. Right? That's not how that works. Teaching is no different, right? So our lens on how we reach these pinnacles of just results, how we reach this space of just recruitment and retention, is about supporting teachers. And sometimes supporting teachers means these systems of instructional coaching cycles done by instructional leadership teams. An incredible voice and researcher in the space of coaching said, coaching, just instructional coaching, and the efforts behind them have led to a growing consensus that professional development really shares critical features that include this notion of job-embedded practice, intense and sustained durations. So we're really focusing on core goals with what we're trying to get at instructionally. And for us, that's thematic learning, right? That's thematic-based instruction. And it involves a focus on discrete skills and active learning.
As we move into enrollment, I want to kind of gently guide us to the actual budget presentation.
You got it.
Because we have to build in time for governing board questions before we bring in our other departments. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
So you heard me say that there's 7,300 students that attend magnet schools in this district. I just want to echo that one more time. In school year 22-23 and 23-24, that represented 18.1% of our total enrollment as a district. What's interesting is in school year 24-25, that number actually climbed to 18.2%. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, we're not immune to enrollment loss. We have it. But what this does tell us is that more families in this district are choosing magnet schools. Now, we know that they choose magnet schools because of some of the work that we do with our magnet coordinators in the space of focusing on this graph, this data set from IES, the Institute of Educational Statistics, focusing on curriculum. For us, thematic-based curriculum, focusing on teacher quality through instructional coaching cycles, focusing on safety. This is what we know families are looking for. It's intuitive. We know this, right? And we do that by helping our magnet coordinators, our principals create value propositions or elevator speeches, creating high-impact social media and high-impact print media. But there's a story behind this as well. I don't want to just sit here and give you language specific to just numbers and be hyper-numerical. Because the narrative behind magnet schools is Tucson High's incredible drama program. The narrative is Las Aguilitas at Davis. The narrative is that an incredible folklorico program at Roskridge. That's the story. You saw data that says, yeah, magnet is working. But there's an undercurrent of incredible teachers and artists and people dedicated to this, their theme, dedicated to their school and their community and what they represent. Now, budget. Let's talk for a second about DSEG. Total DSEG budget we know is $64 million. The magnet portion of that is $7.4 million. That's 11.5% of the entirety of DSEG. Now, that, when we break out that amount into two different things, I'm going to share this briefly with you. The magnet allocation that goes directly to schools is $6.956 million. That's 94% of the entirety of the budget. What that is saying is this amount goes directly to these 12 schools, and principals at these respective schools, they decide how that money is spent to support their theme, to support learning, to support students. When we get even more specific and we say, okay, well, in terms of the entirety of that $7.4 million, how much is just salary and benefits? 93%. So almost $6.9 million, just salary and benefits. Now, we do have proposed reductions that we're communicating this evening. And so those reductions are as follows. So in fiscal year 25 this year, the registration costs for conferences set at $40,000. For next year, we'd like to reduce that by about $25,000, taking it to $15,000. Out-of-state travel for those conferences set at nearly $70,000 this year. We'd like to reduce it to $29,000. Now, keep in mind this money is specific to allowing individuals to attend a conference where A, they learn, and they bring back information to their communities and apply it, and B, allow them to be recognized for their merit awards and their certification. We also spent funds and allocated to the point of $69,000 this fiscal year on consultants. What that did is it helped set structures and systems for instructional leadership team development, for early childhood literacy, for thematic integration, for cycles of instructional coaching. We proposed the reduction of $30,000, going to $39,000, and then we'd like to propose a reduction where we zero out a technology allocation of $3,000 and books and media. And those books are essentially earmarked for professional learning opportunities for magnet coordinators and principals. The total proposed reduction this evening is $108,290. Now, as we transition, I kind of want to leave you on two things, just kind of what we do departmentally. There are two incredible people behind me. I have Aaron Collins, who's our program manager, and Twyla Busby, who is our PDAT. I would just in a very real way say that they are absolutely the heart and the driver of what we do departmentally. And what we do is we visit schools. This year, we've been to schools over 200 times. And we support them through instructional coaching that's given directly to teachers, mentorship and coaching that's given to magnet coordinators and principals, support and structure to develop sites' instructional leadership teams. It's data dives, it's quarterly progress monitoring, it's budget support, it's enrollment support. We do a lot. And then before I take questions, I really thought today about the last thing I want to tell you, and it's essentially this, is that effective programming is built on two key elements. It's people and programs, right? On the people side, we are incredibly proud of the work our team is doing to support students. It's inspiring when you go to Davis. It's inspiring when you go to Tucson High. It's inspiring to be in a robotics lab in Palo Verde. However, I want to gently remind us all to give attention to the program side of this. Yes, we need to work on stabilizing the desegregation budget. But it's important to remember that desegregation isn't just about having students of different races attend the same school. It's about opening the doors of opportunity for every student. See, it's not all that long ago that the pool behind Carrillo Elementary had a specific swimming times for whites and other times for Hispanic and African American students. It was not all that long ago that students could not speak Spanish in school, but now we have incredible dual language programs. 2 are magnet schools. It was not all that long ago that the pillars of separate but equal were just common practice. What desegregation did in this community is it disrupted that. It provided access, built bridges, and created a tenor of change. And that was done through programs like Magnet. But I'm here to respectfully share that although we have reached a milestone with court supervision, we aren't done with this incredibly important programmatic work. So thank you, and I'll take your questions.
Governing board members. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you for your presentation. And I do appreciate how your proposed reductions are very painless and don't impact the classroom. So with that, like I do notice that the total magnet allocation from DSEG is 7.4 million. So not sure if there's any other areas where we can, skim. But if we can go to slide 14, the magnet school enrollment slide. And I don't mean to be hard on you, but I have never seen a chart broken down into such small increments that we see here. It's like by 18.1, 18.12, you know what I mean? And what I'm trying to get at is that, like, with all the presentations that we've seen as far as our desegregation reductions, we're seeing a lack of data in a lot of these presentations. At times we're seeing, the manipulation of numbers, which is kind of present in this chart. And if we go up to the one where we're compared non-magnet to magnet, I would love to see this aggregated down to up and race and even special need, because I want to see an accurate comparison, like the one above this one, 3rd through 8th. Like I think would be fairer to compare it grade by grade rather than like bulking it up, because I know there are some grades that kind of always have higher passing percentages than others. And so especially since it's coming out of DSEG, like we have to see this data aggregated by race. Yeah, but I do appreciate your reductions and how easy they are to make. But again, moving forward, not only with your presentation, but with all the presentations that we've seen and the ones that will come back to us, we've got to get like data that is concrete so that we can base our reductions off of, what's really out there.
Thank you. Michelle, can I speak just briefly to, I think just getting granular with data is always an amazing and important thing to do. And in that space, I just kind of want to quickly echo in terms of what grade bands look like, and I even narrowed that down to regions. If we look at region 2, and I'm just going to use this as an example, and we can quickly move on, but region 2 has, again, by far the most magnet schools in the district. And for us, 5 out of 6 magnet schools led their respective grade bands in either ELA, math, or both on the AASA state assessment last year. Like that, those are points that we see frequently in magnet. We can absolutely provide you with even more granular data by subgroup, especially if we're looking at it not only in the space of race, but in terms of what I heard you say was just students that may have an IEP in the XED space. We can narrow it down even in the ELA space and provide you with that entire lens. Absolutely.
That would be great, yeah, because I don't see that here. I know you probably, have it on hand, but just for us who are kind of removed from everything, to have all of the specifics would be really helpful, not just for your department, but for all the departments that we've been seeing.
Any other? Dr. Tree?
Yeah, I just want to thank the magnet department. Great job in keeping in the true spirit of our cuts, cutting as far away from the classroom as possible, and they really did that. So thank you very much.
Good. Good. All right. Thank you.
I think next up, it's actually her first opportunity to address the board, I believe, since being appointed. Lacey Grijalva is the director for Family and Community Engagement programming in the district. Yeah, absolutely. And I know our board members are incredibly active. If you hadn't had a chance to visit all of our family resource centers, got to do that. It is such a treat. And we're very, very excited for the work that her team continues to do. I'd like to welcome Lacey Grijalva, Director for Family and Community Engagement, to walk them through their budget presentation.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to take a moment to thank Dr. Trujillo, Board President, Ms. Ekstrom, board members, Dr. Shaw, Mr. Romero, Ms. Shaw, for this opportunity tonight, and everybody who has patiently waited, who is here present or watching. I just want to also take a moment to thank the incredible FACE team members that are here who have been waiting. And just to let you know, family engagement isn't just something that I work in, it's something that I believe in my everyday life. And tonight, my family who has been patiently waiting here tonight too. So I just want to thank everybody for the privilege to be here and present on behalf of, I'm a little biased, but an amazing department. So I want to start off by saying family and community engagement truly goes beyond just being a department. It's about creating connections, providing support, and fostering a sense of belonging by emphasizing also that we are a welcoming community, a safe space, a resource, and also highlighting the important support system for everybody's well-being. Right what you can see here is a program overview. We are family and community engagement, but with us, we have our 4 family resource centers that provide amazing resources to our TUSD students, families, and also oftentimes the community. We have an incredible, beautiful Duffy clothing bank, which I often refer to as an experience. Families can walk in and not feel ashamed of having to use a clothing bank. When they walk in, Christy greets them with a beautiful smile and welcomes them to utilize this important resource we have to our community. Part of our department is also the Heart Department, which is also referred to as McKinney-Vento. We help our identified homeless students, and this department has worked really hard this year to be in compliance with our state while making those connections. Prior to me becoming director of this department, Foster care was separated from heart, as it should be. And our Javi Trudeau, who is our specialist in that area, has worked really hard to build this area for our foster students and really making sure that they have the supports and everything that they need, as well as with the parents and working with the state as well. We also have on this side, you'll see Talk It Out, which is a program that we work in conjunction with the University of Arizona, where we offer free mental health to anybody who is part of our TUSD community, which includes staff, students, families. And this year, I'm extremely proud of our Inspire program, which we piloted, and that is for our community partners. We'll get into that a little bit more later, but this is just an umbrella of who we are. You see, family and community engagement isn't just a department in a large district. It's a welcoming community. It's a safe space. It's a connector. It's a resource. It's a source of mental relief. Above all, we are a family. This slide I am incredibly proud of. When I started this department as a coordinator in 2016, we had a staff about 14. But the need in our community grew, and so did we. And I'm extremely proud to say we currently have a little over 20 employees now within our department. And every single one of them is a part of our puzzle. They are all needed in our department. There is not one that we could do without. It just wouldn't work. Our goal in our department is committed to building the active participation of families in their children's learning and school life. Our work involves creating partnerships among schools, families, and community to overall enhance our student success. I tell oftentimes a lot of people that I read something a long time ago. If you can't figure out your purpose, find your passion. Your passion will lead you to your purpose. And I truly believe everybody who works in the department has found their purpose. Our stakeholders involve many people. It involves our Inspire partners. It involves our space staff. It involves our parents. And this year, we would like to start our Power Committee, which is going to involve our parent guardians. And you know, TUSD, we have to have acronyms for everything. So that would stand for Parents Ongoing, sorry, I can't read that, for what? For well-being, education, and resources. And that we really want to really give our parents a voice and a place to come and be a part of who we are and the decisions that we make. This is really important for me to highlight, and I'm sorry, it's really hard to read, but our direct impact does not just go to one area in our district. We serve all 40 plus students. We are available for all 3,000 or so staff. We support the greater good of our TUSD community, as well as working with community partners here in Tucson, in Arizona, and we have worked with community partners outside of our state. As you can see, there are some numbers in front of you that we pull from our own tracking system that shows the increase in areas of what we've had an effect on in our school this year. We hope to continue to grow those numbers as we see the need increasing every single day. Surrounding those numbers are pictures of things that we have had throughout the year, such as our Impact Tucson event, where we hosted, I believe it was about 5,000 different students that came through there. We provided backpacks and food and entertainment for them. I also want to point out that this year, that event was also pretty much fully funded by our Inspire partners. So thank you to the community for coming in and helping us provide that. We have a jacket party every year where we provide jackets to all of our students at all of our 4 family resource centers. That's one of the pictures that you see there. As well as fun events, our Southwest Family Resource Center has amazing fun events and activities for our families to attend, and they just had a sock hop that you'll see there. So I encourage you to take a look at these pictures. This is something that we and our staff truly believe in. Our staff is there every day, greeting families, encouraging families, supporting families. It's not just a job for them. This is a way of life. Another part of our department is really making sure that we are providing equitable access across the district in family engagement with all 88 schools. We know that effective family engagement leads to improvement student outcomes, including better academic performance, higher attendance, just increased motivation all around, and that it just becomes a priority for our district. I believe that family engagement should not be an expectation. It should be part of our culture and climate in TUSD. We have family engagement guidelines that we have set for every single school. The amazing coordinators in our department are each assigned to a region where they work directly and provide direct support to these schools. So if it's with their principal or their school community liaison or their family engagement site contact, we hold them accountable for these expectations. We also use the framework of Dr. Joyce Epstein, which is 25 years of research-based practice that we utilize within our trainings that we provide 4 times a year. We also offer a drop-in session every month where we're on there for 4 hours, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon, where schools can drop in and ask questions, get support or advice, or just emotional support as well if needed. So here's our budget. Our budget for FACE is about $580,000. The 10% cut would have been about $58,000. When I met with the coordinators, I really asked them to look at need versus want. So we were able to make some adjustments in certain areas. What I couldn't adjust or take away was a person. Every single person in our department is a need. We were able to take away overtime. We were able to take away, the biggest thing that we were able to take away is added duty. Now what I want to get with that is, there you see the strategic goal, number 5, where our district has stated that every school have a school community liaison. We know that every school does not use their Title I funds for this. Traditionally in the past, our department has stepped in and used that funding that I have reduced to add added duty to a certified or classified person to be a family engagement site contact. Next year with this cut, unfortunately, that is where I saw the cuts needed. Some of the ideas that I've come up with, which I haven't talked to Mr. Lanza yet, but possibly teaming up with Title I and seeing if that's somewhere they could step in. Maybe making it an expectation of schools. I don't know, but if I have to make a cut, that's where I would make it in order to keep our staff that we need within our department. Wow, that was fast. So I leave you with this. Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Our goal in our department is every single person that walks into our center, any area within our department, that they leave feeling heard, seen, and wanted, that they leave knowing that they are a part of this TUSD family. And so I ask you, when looking at budgets, to keep us in mind. I am here to answer questions, provide you with additional information if needed, and I thank you all for being here and listening tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. The cut to certified staff added duty, how many people would that be?
Well, this last time it's not really cutting a person.
Okay.
It's just, so what it is if schools don't have the position of a school community liaison, we stepped in and asked principals, we need you to assign, because we didn't want principals to take on that role. They already have 110 things to do. but family engagement still needs to be a priority in our schools and in our districts. So we asked them to assign somebody to take on this role. And we gave them, I think it was $350 for the whole year as added duty. And they would clock in while they were utilizing this time for either reports or planning or the family engagement teams. So this year, I would say it went up 60% in our district that schools decided not to use their Title I funds for a school committee liaison, and they used it somewhere else. And so they were left to have somebody appointed for this role. So often it was a counselor, a monitor, we've had teachers, and it was conflicting because we do have professional developments, and so it was hard for them to attend our professional developments. That's why we tried to accommodate with drop-in sessions. The coordinators are amazing with going out to schools and meeting with them in person, oftentimes on Zoom if needed. So yeah, and I anticipate this year will probably a higher percentage.
So how many schools?
So out of the 88 schools, there's about, this year, there are a little over 40 schools.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Dr. Trujillo?
Yeah, President Ekstrom, I think we're seeing a great result as we bridge to Title I about state level cuts to title budgets layered in with loss of enrollment. So those two forces creating smaller school level budgets, tough decisions needing to be made, and now we're seeing the result as schools have to make difficult choices between school community liaisons versus library assistant versus that extra TA. And it continues to be such a difficult circumstance. But I do appreciate everything your team did to try to minimize the impact of these cuts.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Shaw.
Thanks, Ms. Grijalva, for your presentation. And yeah, this is going to be a tough one because I know all the great work that your department does. I'm having a little trouble reading the reductions with the overlapping of the text. Yeah, this is going to be tough because I know you do great work and it's going to be hard to cut back anywhere. I've been to the Duffy Clothing Bank and talked to Ms. Olbert and all the conditions that she's under and helping, our community, and then working under the extreme heat conditions and being so strategic with all those fans that you place around there. I thank you for dealing with that over the years. And we're going to fix that very soon.
Yes.
And then Mr. Sawyer, how you leverage all of your community connections to supplant all the initiatives that are happening. Okay. Whatever happens, I know you all will pivot and, provide those services that we so desperately need. And so I thank you for, providing some areas where you may be able to reduce things, but I hope that, as a board that we can find a way to also preserve these programs that are so desperately needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Next is the Multicultural Curriculum Department. Dr. Trujillo?
Yeah, I'd like to welcome another first-time director like Ms. Grijalva with her first official presentation, Dr. Rosalina Rodriguez. Welcome. She is the Director for Multicultural Education, finishing up her first year, and here to walk us through her budget planning.
Good evening, Governing Board President Ekstrom, Clerk Dr. Shaw, members Luna Rose Romero and Ms. Shaw, Superintendent Dr. Trujillo, Legal Counsel, and the community here present and at home as well. We are so delighted to be here today as a team to tell you a little bit about our department. And am I pointing in the right direction? Little glitch, sorry. There it is. Okay, So we're going to start very quickly here with our brand new vision and mission. Was created this year to ground our work. As my first year, this was something that the team and I decided we needed in order to continue on with our work. And me being new with someone as experienced as Dr. Sequoia, with being a 10-year veteran in the department. This is our staff. We have here Dr. Junko Sequoia, Multicultural Integration Program Manager. Please stand. Our veteran. And then Ms. Terry Kilcran, Professional Development Academic Trainer. Just want to publicly thank them for all their work in our little department. A really quick introduction of our responsibilities in our department for curriculum revision and development. So for ELA, we have several resources that we create with books. Teachers can check out books. They have includes teaching guides correlated with our core curriculum. We primarily serve teachers who serve students. So we're a little bit of a different department here. We are currently working with Michael in Social Studies department, in the Science department, to correlate our resources also with the science curriculum, social studies, and math. And so also the Culture Kits, which we call book baskets, is something that we're really proud of. You will see our improvement with those. The TUSD responsibilities for multicultural integration in professional development is what we do the most of, and this is through PLD sessions, Wednesday professional development, in-class embedded professional development, and PLC planning work with teachers. So these two staff members go into schools and support teachers, as well as libraries and librarians to create culture kits or book baskets that teachers have immediately available to incorporate into their lesson plans. That being said, we have, in addition to PD, book baskets, and resources with teaching guides, we are very proud to support our libraries, like I said, and we schedule read-alouds to support multicultural integration and after-school events. One of the things that I don't have data in the slides for is we coordinated 25 read-aloud events that Dr. Shaw mentioned, with over 4,500 students attending those sessions this year. The importance of this is that specifically during Love of Reading Week, TUVA students and maybe students and teachers in schools that don't have Love of Reading event or people coming to read to them, they can hop into a Zoom and have important community members, professors from U of A, and people like authors, local authors, read to them, and the teachers receive teaching guides that they can continue on teaching after the read aloud or even prep before. So to get quick here, we're going into the zero-based budget process this year. It was developed by 3 staff members that you see here today, and the support of Ms. Aranda, who is amazing and very supportive to our department. You can see here that our budget originally was $309,000. When we had to go to the drawing board a couple of times. The first time, we had wiped up everything to get to the 10% initially requested. That left us with only staffing and benefits for the 3 of us. Nothing else, zero money on any other non-staffing issue. But Martha and Fina were very gracious on sending us back to the drawing board and saying, you have to have mileage, you have to, for them to go, staff to go to schools, you have to have pay stipends for education. So those are things that are in consensus and you have to pay them. So go back and add some of that. So then we opted to cut 18% of the non-staffing funding, which is really only a 2% deduction in the total funding of our department. So the majority of that money came from deducting added duty and other traveling and other things that we can deduct without cutting staff. So that being said, one more thing on that one. The last line in that item, I just want to make sure, when I first started in the department, I made the same mistake that other people make and believe that the multicultural department has a $1.5 million budget, which we don't. That is a multicultural desegregation activities budget line, and the portion for multicultural department is only 309. So the problem is usually people see the first page of that DSEG budget and not scroll down to the item, so the itemized area, and so they believe that that's what we have. But just wanted to clarify that for our people at home that are watching and those that don't scroll down. Okay, so the PD improvements that we've made this year, this is my first year here, so you can see here the incredible improvements from last year to this year. My veteran staff member, Dr. Sequoy, said that to me that previous years look similar to this 23-24 data. And that's simply, part of it is because historically the funding has been the same for this department, and it's difficult to accomplish what we have accomplished this year. With me acting many times as if I am one of the PDADs, and Dr. Sequoy as well. We all three go to 3 schools at the same time on Wednesday to provide professional development as needed, just to be sure that we are improving and getting to as many schools as possible, as many teachers as possible for multicultural integration purposes. And so you can see here the improvements have been significant, with the number of schools supported increasing during PD and PLD, and the same with teachers attending professional development and PLD sessions for our department. School events and story basket improvements are also very significant. One of the proudest ones that we have now, and one that is really it's not sustainable at this rate. We're very, very busy with deploying over 1,200 books to teachers with their lesson plans for them to integrate into the core curriculum. And so that's one of our proudest ones. We're trying to get into some systematic improvements to try to sustain the work that we're doing right now. And this is just more data broken down, similar data, but broken down by the grade level bands: high school, middle school, elementaries, and K-8s. I know you can see the numbers, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to read those to you. I also wanted to share, this is our office celebration data board. Every time we have a new school added to our list of schools that we're working with, we add a sticky to our board, depending on the service. This is very significant to us because when I first got to the department, we weren't working with a lot of schools, and I found that the challenge was that people didn't know a lot about our department and what we did. So we embarked on marketing and letting the teachers know who we were. One of the things we did is, you can see here, I did a little Christmas card and sent it out to all the principals with the services we offer on the back and a QR code for them to sign up. We have more than half of the schools in our district now with 3 or more services from our department. And we're really happy about that, because the more we provide to the teachers, the more multicultural integration we have in our classrooms, and our students can see themselves in the materials they're learning from. Here's the impact that PLD and PD has in teachers. I don't want to take a lot of your time. I know you have access to this presentation, but it's been successful. We get good information from the teachers, and the ones that now know about us continue to come back for more resources. Here's the impact of virtual read aloud. And again, I don't have an entourage of call to the audience for the sake of saving you some time, but there's a link there that you can click on. And on your own time, you can see the positive feedback we've received from teachers. With that, I just want to emphasize that we have done all this work and all of these improvements with just 3 of us. Initially, it was just Dr. Sequoia and I, because we did not have our PDAT until January 2025. And so it was just the 2 of us doing all those improvements, and we're so thankful that Ms. Kilcran is now with us supporting. These are the current challenges that we face. As I say, we need to streamline books basket creation and distribution. Resources, we need more resources to meet the demands of books. And I want to thank you publicly for approving our over 300 contemporary books that we'll create more resources with and send to the teachers. And you approved that tonight. We appreciate that. That collection had not been updated since 2014, so that was a very important and special for us today. We need increased dedicated clerical support. Before this presentation was sent to you all and for this meeting, we found out that we were receiving support with an administrative assistant. We're very happy to get that support to streamline some of those processes of checking and checking out books and book baskets and some clerical support. In the future, we would need to increase the PDAT staff to support our 89 schools. That's our hopes and wishes, of course. The current operations are really non-sustainable, and we need, again, systematic improvements. One of the things that we deducted were the added duty pay for the coordinator and PDAT to work extra time, sometimes attending our events and supporting with multicultural integration during STEM nights and Love of Reading nights. And so that's some of the current challenges. These are the department goals, which is our last slide. A lot of the things that are in here I already mentioned. We do want to have, hopefully, a functional multicultural library that teachers can come and work, select the resources while they're planning, maybe after school during their planning time, and having that open to students and hopefully one day to the community for multicultural resources. Where we want to bridge that gap of science and math resources that are multicultural as well, and provide more professional development. I'm going to skip the last part because, like I said, we are now receiving the support of an administrative assistant, in addition to, of course, Diana in curriculum and professional development with Heidi, who supports us often with our needs. With that, I leave you for questions and answers.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions for Dr. Rodriguez? Yes, Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, President Ekstrom. Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, for the presentation. I'm really excited to see all the growth with the professional development and interactive with a school. So only like 5 schools left to get to, hopefully before the end of the school year. My question is less to you, but to Dr. Trujillo and the team. So on slide 7, she mentioned about the department budget versus the allocation. Are we addressing the remaining almost $3 million at some point, or how does that work in terms of this the purpose of our desegregation?
The remainder of the balance, it's not aligned to the actual multicultural department, is in fine arts.
Okay, so it's coming in fine arts.
It's coming into fine arts.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, for the presentation. It's great to see you again.
Thank you.
And yeah, I appreciate Dr. Shaw's question, and thank you for clarifying the, how your budget compares to the multicultural curriculums desegregation activities, because yeah, it is a little bit confusing. With all the information that you have here, how do you purchase materials for all the initiatives that you're doing? Do you have partnerships with organizations or businesses?
No, so it's my first year. My goal is hopefully to find some grants and apply to, and maybe find some partners to get some money for resources. This year, it was a curse and a blessing that we did not have a PDAT for the first semester. We had a hard time hiring someone because I started looking a little late, and then one of the things that happened was the people that apply and we selected was a CSP from a school who that had a brand new principal. So I worked with the assistant superintendent to ensure that we supported the school either until they hire a CSP or the end of the semester, which we hired her towards the end of September. She stayed there until December. And we just wanted to make sure that we're here really to support our schools, and that was part of supporting that specific school. So the savings from that semester were moved into buying those resources. I also collaborated with Mr. Cameron Tarabati, who was able to have some savings to transfer also to the multicultural department for me to have about $55,000. Also, Mr. Hernandez, I asked him to dig and see if he had some funding. He was able to provide a little lump sum as well, again, to get to those $55,000. So 3 people collaborated to make this happen. We will be able to order about 10 copies of each of the books that you approved tonight, a little bit over 300 books, which will bridge the gap that, we haven't purchased any books in this department since 2014. So we have that gap in contemporary resources. There's so much published out there for the many different cultures that we represent in our district that we don't have resources for. So we are going to embark on a journey to see where we can get those resources.
Okay, well, I appreciate you being so creative and finding a way to, do what you do. And I hope that anyone listening tonight, if they have any community connections, that they could reach out to you so that you have the materials that you need to do all the work.
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you. Next is item 10.2, TUSD budget study session number 2.
President Ekstrom, members of the board, given the lateness of the hour, we'd like the board to entertain possibly item 10.3, moving to the April 15th meeting, which would make this current item 10.2 the final item of the evening.
That's fine with me.
All right. I'd like to ask our Chief Financial Officer to go through part 2 of what the first budget study. The good news is the long part is behind us, okay? So this is actually the briefer part of that study session, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Hernandez.
Good evening again, board members. So yeah, as Dr. Trujillo mentioned, this is part 2 of the report or the update that I gave you last go around earlier this month. And so what was left to discuss was the Budget Advisory Committee's supporting information. So as you recall, the Budget Advisory presented their recommendations to you in February. The board requested additional supporting information to determine how it is that the committee came to the recommendations or to the conclusions. And so last time we provided you a binder with several copies of the presentations that provided you a lot of that information. This presentation includes a link to all of that supporting information for the individuals at home or in the audience who want to take a look at the board docs page for the committee's information. So digging into the first recommendation. So if you recall, the initial recommendation from the committee was to keep the fee structure for the student fee schedules and create a promotion of tax credits to educate the community on using tax credits and exploring other methods of funding. So as some background for that, fees are obviously very different at different levels for different activities. You can see high schools, middle schools, elementaries charge different fees for different activities be they be they interscholastics or fine arts or clubs. One point that I want to make is that where I say that in high schools, these fees contribute towards the cost of officiating, this is actually also true in the middle schools. So the fees that are collected for the sports at the middle school level are also used to pay some of the officiating that's taking place for those sports that require those officials for those sports. In fiscal year 24, across all the multiple areas, over $595,000 was collected in fees. Most of these contributions to these programs in the forms of tax credits and not including fees was over 1.6 million. So you can see that the majority of the revenue that comes into the variety of programs, be they fine arts or interscholastics or clubs, is actually coming from other places that are not directly student revenue or student fees. When it comes to tax credits specifically, because that is one of the largest share of revenue that in particular the interscholastics and the fine arts departments collect at the school level, in fiscal year 24, there was a collection of 2.3 million. Schools spend over 3.1 million, but we're still carrying about a $7 million balance across all the tax credit funds. And surprisingly enough, the 5 largest balances were in elementary schools that have undesignated funds. So not even the high schools with all of the variety of clubs and sports have the largest funds. The largest funds are actually sitting at 5 elementary schools, all of them undesignated. So the school councils have the ability to redesignate those funds for allowable uses. So, there was a question as to contributions from EEF. So in talking to the executive director, Don Bell at EEF, they confirmed that they provided $99,000 in student scholarships to TUSD students last school year. Essentially, they covered in the 23-24 school year, they covered every student who requested a scholarship. So those dollars go directly to the student's account at the schools, directly from the EEF. The interscholastics department, here's a breakdown essentially of how we fund them. Most of their money is in operations, almost $2 million. They received some funding in capital. Several years ago, the board did authorize an investment in dollars for capital equipment and upgrades to several interscholastics facilities across the district. That has since then expired. But also there are stipends that are provided at all the school levels for different activities. Focusing on the high schools, we provide 38 stipends for high schools that can be used for clubs, so extra duty clubs, and for interscholastics. So this is how we pay head coaches, assistant coaches, club sponsors, what have you. Every high school gets that 38 stipend amount. We are going to take a look at how we actually redo those stipends, because we've discovered some inequities over the years, because some schools have, I will compare like Tucson High to Santa Rita, right? So we've got a broad, set of activities taking place at Tucson High versus the number of activities possibly taking place at Santa Rita, but they both get 38 stipends. So we want to make sure that we're creating some balance around those, and Herman House, the director of interscholastics, is going to help us to develop on how we create a more equitable distribution of extra duty stipends, particularly around interscholastic activities. Part of the student fee schedules that you also approve are the fundraisers that our students are actually fundraising on their own. You can see these are the top 5 activities. Our students, being the entrepreneurs that they are, collected over $1.2 million in revenues on their own. And their fundraisers are for them. So whatever they collect, whatever they sell, pay for the activities. That is part of the student fee schedule. So if the student fee schedule were to disappear, we have to essentially eliminate the fundraising that the students can collect in terms of fees to join some of their clubs or some of their activities. Ultimately, in the same policy for student fee schedules, when you adopt them, you authorize principals to waive any of the fees that are required for any of the activities, and then principals have the ability to look at other funds within their budgets in order to offset. They have access to, tax credits, donations, civic center, essentially to pay for any student who has the inability to pay for their own fees or their families. Okay, so that's fees. Any questions on that one?
Shaw.
Thank you. Did you say that if we eliminated the fees, that would prohibit students from raising money?
It would prohibit them from collecting fees to be part of their clubs. So some of them have membership fees, for example. It wouldn't prohibit them from having fundraisers, selling tickets to the prom, for example. They would still be able to do that. But if that club, for example, has a membership fee, they wouldn't be able to charge that fee because all fees have to be approved by the board.
But if we eliminated it, they wouldn't need to charge it, but they still can fundraise?
They can fundraise. They may fundraise still. They just can't charge, let's say it's $5 to be a part of, I don't know, student council.
Right.
They wouldn't be able to charge those $5.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the information. I do still think that if we had just maybe have these fees be optional, who can pay may pay, but if you're unable to, or if it's just too much, then don't even worry about it. Like, I think that would really be a boost in our enrollment if we can, put that out to the general public that, you come to TUSD, you can attend any club, play any sport, and there will be no fee. And I'm looking an item 6.8 student activity funds. I've been looking through it, and I invite all the other board members to really kind of look through it. There's a lot of money in there, and not more often than not, the balances at the end are close to the beginning balance. It's not always the case, but sometimes there's even an increase in that balance. Sometimes there is a reduction. Sometimes there's a severe reduction depending on what the club or the activity is. But more often than not, it's balancing out a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, those revenues and expenses are entirely student directed.
Right.
Right. So ultimately, the listing of clubs that we provide you, they determine the activities that they perform and when and how much revenue they're going to collect and when and how much expenses. So we don't really manage them in terms of telling them you must spend X. They obviously have to go through our purchasing process in order to buy a service or buy any goods, but ultimately those are entirely student directed entrepreneurial funds, if you want to look at them that way.
Right. And I think it is a good lesson for, students to learn how to fundraise and brings a program up from the ground floor. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm going to remain, what's that word they use? Stalwart?
That's the right word.
Yeah, in my request that we do eliminate student fees, because I just think it would really help us with our enrollment.
Anything else? No? Okay, so future of summer school. So the recommendation from the committee was to continue summer school and prioritize transitional years. So the committee recommended the 3rd, 5th, 8th grade year, and then junior and senior years in high school, while looking at different ways at keeping other programs. So currently, I've provided you a listing of all the summer programs that are currently set out to be rolled out for this coming summer. The majority of those programs are 21st century schools, so we've got 22 sites who are each using their allocation of federal funding from the 21st century program in order to operate those programs, those summer programs. And so most of those are taking place already. Some of them are using DSEC funding, like in ALE, dual language, English language development is using some federal funding as well, in order to have different types of activities. So you can see that there's a variety of these. Some of them are related specifically to an individual type of program, be it like reading recovery or move on when reading. Some of them are different, like the adventure camps in the African American Student Services Department, which are more enrichment with an academic focus. Dr. Strozier was able to find external funding from an external partner to do a sponsorship around that program. So the variety of programs is still there when it comes to summer school. These are the unfunded programs, right? So these are the programs that generally were funded using ESSER funds, right? A lot of the credit recovery and acceleration, high school ELD, freshman academy. We obviously had a universal K-5 middle school program, and summer school program, and then we had some language support programs for refugees. Mr. Frank Armenta, who oversees a lot of these summer programs, these are his numbers. So, we served over 9,000 kids and spent just under $4 million in ESSER funds in order to run our full FY24 summer programs. So for this year, this is kind of the limitation that we're looking at. So we will continue to have high school summer school for credit recovery. We will continue to have freshman academy. There will be credit recovery at the Southwest Center with the Native American Student Services Department. And all of the different schools that are actually offering these programs will receive an allocation of funding for supplies. So just under $654,000. Some of these programs are going to be funded through Title I. So we were very fortunate that ADE was actually reallocated about $1.2 million in Title I funds to several school districts. We were one of those recipients. That came from a lot of school districts who did not receive or basically forgot, I don't know what the past tense of forego is, but they essentially let go of their school improvement grants, and they decided that ADE was going to redistribute these in the form of Title I. So what we looked at is, look, we're going to take those Title I dollars, we're going to sit down with Heidi and with Frank Armenta, and we're going to take a look at what are the priority programs for the summer to use these additional one-time Title I dollars. Now, two schools where we cannot use these Title I dollars that are going to have summer programs are Sabino High School and University High School, because unfortunately they are not Title I schools. So we're going to allocate some rebate funding so that they can have their summer academies as well at those two schools. But otherwise, it's going to allow us to offer a lot of these programs across the district. But we have not identified any funding beyond fiscal year 25. So credit recovery, the acceleration in the freshman academy. We have no universal programs for grades K through 8. Like I said, when we did those, it was about $4 million that came from ESSER. We do not have the funding identified to do that. But the priority that the committee requested is looking at those transitional years as part of the summer school program.
So those would be kids going into 3rd grade, 5th grade, 8th grade. Okay.
Yeah. Well, going out of those grades, going from transitions from 3rd to 4th and 5th to 6th, 8th to 9th, and then junior to senior.
Okay. And do you know how much that would be?
So that would be, so right now we're kind of running a limited program around that. It is about a $1.2 million price tag, but we're not doing universal. So they're running hubs. So they're running, a collection of sites where some of these programs are being hosted. But I mean, essentially we're leaving other grades that are not at those transitional years. We're leaving other schools behind, and they have the option to participate in the other programs I showed at the beginning of the slideshow, or ultimately not provide anything. Any other questions? Okay, we're almost there. So the priority here was fine arts and PE. So the committee recommended to maintain the current fine arts programming. When it comes to PE, it should obviously continue, or they wanted to continue in the high schools because it is a graduation requirement for high school students. But at the KA level, they're talking about the ability to build partnerships to alleviate any loss of offerings or programs for PE. So right now, fine arts in particular, these are the breakouts in terms of how many teachers and classified positions we've got across the entire district from the fine arts department. They've got a budget that's just under $11 million. It's funded from M&O, DSEG, Classroom Site Fund, and Title IV. All elementary, all K-8 schools has some fine arts support or for visual or performing arts. May not be a full-time teacher, but according to the fine arts department, there is at least someone actually spending time providing visual or performing arts instruction at those schools. High schools, their fine arts are embedded in their formula. Obviously, because fine arts is an option for graduation, especially if you want to attend the university. There is the ability to do orchestra and art, but those are part of the funding formula at the high schools. So PE and fine arts are essentially taken care of within the funding formula. With PE in particular, there is no funding allocated in K-5 for PE teachers. So in looking at the presentation that Heidi Aranda from Curriculum and Development presented, the PE standards are incorporated by the classroom teachers. Middle schools all do have at least one PE teacher. One of the things that they mentioned is, teaching family life class is a struggle when there are not two PE teachers, right? Because generally they try to split them out so that the students who are not going to participate in the family life curriculum can go off and do the traditional PE, whatever that sport is, and then the other students can participate in FLC. When that's not taking place, then they have to find alternatives to make sure that the students who are not participating in FLC have the ability to be essentially somewhere else. It is not mandatory in the middle school, though, to have physical education, whereas in high schools, it is, right? It is a high school graduation requirement to have PE. It is also funded through the teacher FTE allocation, so high schools receive a dedicated allocation of PE teachers. One of the requests from the board last time around was what it would cost to add one PE teacher, one FTE, at every grade level under high school. So every school, K-5, K-6, K-8, that's about a $6 million price tag. Adding one FTE PE at every middle school is another $1 million. So we need about $6.6 million to put one dedicated PE teacher at every school, K through 8. Any questions on fine arts and PE?
Thank you. So last time this came to us, I asked if you could try to see how much it would cost if we had a floating PE teacher for 3 schools. I'm sure that will be maybe cut that in half. I'm not sure. I'm not good at doing math on the fly, but if this comes back to us, it would be great to see that so that we can figure out how much staffing is needed in order to get PE, a day of PE for each elementary school. And I don't have the Arizona Revised Statute in front of me, but I do believe that it says that K through 5, if they don't have PE, then they would have to have a certain amount of recess, and within that recess there has to be 60 minutes of instruction, a
structured
kickball.
play.
Yeah. So I don't believe we're doing that. I don't know what the penalty is for not doing that, but we have to get our students more active.
Dr. Trio?
We provided the board a comprehensive audit of every single school in the district and have verified that we are offering 60 minutes of PE per the state's requirements.
60 minutes of structured?
60 minutes of recess. 60 minutes of recess.
Okay, but the statute speaks to it having to be structured play or a kickball game. It can't just be, okay, go play, and students are standing around.
So we have verified that every school has PE, but because of staffing limitations, them not having the actual body, it is not possible to provide structured play. We also have our consensus agreement that limits the administration's ability to mandate that a teacher outside of PE, which we don't have staffed at all of our schools, is required to facilitate structured play during what would essentially be their break. So there's negotiation issues, there's consensus agreement issues, but students are getting their 2 mandatory recess periods. They are getting their 60 minutes outside. In a lot of schools, absolutely, they're getting structured opportunities met through PE or through other staff that is available, that is out there able to structure play. But that's the reality of both our staffing and our financial constraints.
And I believe at some schools, the older grade kids, do structured play for like the little ones. So like they'll show them basketball or kickball, but I'm not sure it's at all schools.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to accept what we have now because I feel like every student should have a great PE teacher like we had at Line Weaver, like I had in elementary schools. And, you know, I think it's just like it speaks to a greater issue in our society of how we're just becoming super unhealthy. And yeah, it is a budgetary issue, but we just got to find a way. So I hope we can keep working on this.
Yeah, and to your point, Ms. Shaw, that's essentially what the committee is saying is that, you know, keep what we're doing at high school, but what are the alternatives in order to provide physical education in K through 8, right? So what are some of the ideas outside of the box, essentially, to do what you're requesting?
Right, and maybe, like, I don't know when the lobbyists are going to be here again, but if they can find a way that we can get funding for K-5 PE teachers, that would be fabulous.
Okay, school-based administrative positions. So the recommendation from the committee was that that we should be prioritizing site budgets and positions that interact directly with students and perform vital operations by creating a comprehensive rubric of assistant principal positions at school sites, and that directors in central departments essentially need to consider a comprehensive review of recurring expenses like software and positions and determine potential cuts to recommend to the board. So the number one at the top of the list is obviously assistant principals. Right now, the board formula allocates 1 FTE for every 600 students. We've got 34 schools that have at least 1 FTE, so we've got 52 FTEs across the district. You can see kind of the breakdown of the different grade levels. We spent about $5.3 million in compensation for these individuals. But we have 27 schools that don't meet the enrollment criteria for 1 or more FTEs. So we've got about 29 FTEs out there that outside the current formula, essentially we exceed the formula by $2.9 million. So in order to continue to fund at the current level, we need to actually have an additional almost 7,000 students across all of those different schools to maintain that level of funding or those level of FTEs given the current formula of 1 to 600. The regional superintendents did a phenomenal job in talking to the committee about the role of the assistant principal. I've kind of put them here and what the impact would be to those individual schools if they lost the assistant principal role. And like I said, they did a really great job to present kind of not just the academic, but kind of the holistic component of how the assistant principal role fits into the school environment. And so you can see these listed throughout here. It's a lot of the same things that you've heard in the past. What the committee requested, though, is they wanted information then about central administrative positions, right? So how are we funding central administrative positions versus how we allocate dollars for site-based administrative positions, be they principals and in this case, assistant principals. So they asked for a review of all board-appointed administrative positions. I've provided all of their titles here. There are 56 board-appointed administrators who supervise 532 FTEs across several positions. They are funded from a variety of funding sources. Not all of them come from M&O. One of the things that the committee was looking for is essentially, are there savings in central administrative positions that could then be turned around and used to fund these APs? And the answer is yes and no, because not all of these funding positions are eligible to fund those AP positions, right? Essentially, the only funding that you have is maintenance and operations. We can't use food services, which pays for Lindsay Aguilar's salary as a director of food service, to then pay for an assistant principal somewhere else. That's not an allowable use of that fund. And that argument can be made across several funding sources that fund those administrative positions. They also wanted to see, like I said, what those individuals who do they supervise? And we provided them a listing of all of those. So there is a breakdown of those available in board docs to see essentially what are they doing. They wanted information on schools who also don't have assistant principals and looking at their enrollment data. So 28 schools that don't meet the current enrollment. We've got 28 schools who average 250 fewer students than the 1-to-600 ratio. So we've got 28 schools that don't even come close to the 600. But we've got 60 schools that don't have an AP, yet their enrollment is either equal to or greater than current schools who do have one. And I provided an example. Utterback has 264 students. They get 1 FTE for an AP. Robbins K-8 has 435 students, but has no AP. McGee, 294 with 1. Dodge with 418 with none. And so there is an inequity when it comes to just taking a look at it from a 1-to-600 perspective. And so one of the things that the recommendation from the committee is essentially take a look at it from a higher level, right? Don't just focus on the 1-to-600, but take a look at more holistic criteria that says, these are other elements that we should be looking at when allocating an assistant principal to an individual school. That would mean that basically everybody goes back into the pile, right? So everybody, we'd have to evaluate all of these. Some of them, like high schools, for example, they get a specific formula. Our comprehensive high schools, by and large, need to have an assistant principal. But we need to, the criteria is, what should that criteria be? To do a comprehensive review of the entire assistant principal pool, because ultimately, based on the current board-approved formula, we are exceeding the funding that should technically be available for those positions. Any questions on that one? That was the last recommendation.
Yes, Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, President Ekstrom. Question, when the Budget Advisory Committee looked at the assistant principal options, did they vet any itinerant assistant principal positions? So if there's schools that don't meet the 600 threshold but had 400 students, which is still pretty tough for a principal to manage by themselves. And there's another school close by that also had a similar population, didn't meet the threshold for the full 600. Did they look at any kind of options to see, is a half-time assistant principal better than nothing, and can we share between two different schools nearby, so they can go maybe couple of days a week to one place, couple of days a week another place, or morning, afternoon, or figure out how to split that?
No, they didn't ask for any information on an itinerant model. So we didn't provide them any information to look at essentially what you were talking about, trying to kind of split the difference between multiple schools. I think I would say that based on the information that was presented by the regional superintendents, I think there'd be some difficulty in trying to do that in some cases, simply because those assistant principals tend to be pretty embedded into those communities, similar to principals. It's not to say that it's not impossible to do a case model where you could have kind of like a traveling AP that goes between sites and is assigned to multiple sites. We do have other positions and do that. I just don't know that we've kind of currently envisioned an assistant principal to do that.
Yes, Dr. Trio.
It's also important to note that alongside Budget Advisory Committee's examination of the issue, we also have a group from Eli meeting with employee relations and the administration, looking at what Ricky talked about. What's a new criteria that's more comprehensive in consideration of assigning APs? School composition, percentage of exec programs on the campus, percentage of specialty programs like Magnet or Avid, or percentage of gifted and talented self-contained. So we're starting to have those conversations along with some initial discussions about what an itinerant would do. I think the principal concern with itinerant is if you go that route, there would have to be just a minimal amount of tasks so that there's consistency from school to school. Like if it's just one AP is going to go to 2 different schools and just process the discipline, that's easy. But if one assistant principal is going to go to 2 schools and carry out the full functions of AP, that's where we're getting into the gray areas. So I think there's work to do on both fronts. But just conceptually, knowing that if an itinerant model is going to be considered, it's probably going to be fewer duties and more volume, so that the assistant principal will have more schools to deal with, but have finite duties. Like, we're going to do the discipline, we're going to do absenteeism follow-up, and then that's it. Now, that is better than having 0, which is that argument that, like, okay, currently some schools have 0, And those are two very time-consuming tasks that I'm sure principals would require, would like to see some help. So you'll see us be back at some point with sort of the product of that work, because I know that from a financial perspective, BAC was just, do you recommend funding this or not? I don't think they got into alternative models.
They did not. No, they didn't get into it. All right. Last few slides. So there were questions about budget book and the reconciliation and balances and questions around those issues that have been brought up. This is going to get pretty technical at almost 10 o'clock at night. But so we have a digital budget book and an Excel budget book. I'll just call them DBB and EBB. We compile funds differently. So the digital budget book is aligned to governmental standards, right? We develop a budget book similar to the way we develop the annual comprehensive financial report. We use governmental accounting standards board categories or GASB categories in order to compile the different funds that are put together in the budget book. And I provided you what those GASB categories are. Now, the digital budget book does provide an explanation as to what each district fund corresponds to every GASB fund. So for example, general fund is comprised of M&O, auxiliary, indirect, Medicaid, and impact aid. So general fund is not to be considered the M&O fund. So there isn't a one-to-one match in that aspect, simply because the presentation of the Excel book and the digital budget book are completely different based on completely different constructions of those. So additionally, the digital budget book uses a GASB statement. I provided that link if you really want to look at that, where we determine what we present discretely based on quantitative and qualitative criteria. And you can see kind of what the difference is. You know, there's a percentage method under quantitative, and there's more of a holistic kind of, is this a significant thing in terms of a qualitative method? So for example, we use the qualitative criteria and we call out DSEG. DSEG is not a fund. I've said that, consistently in the past, but because it has significant activity, it is of a public interest. We call it out specifically in the budget book so that we can show constituents, here's the activity of ins and outs and the activity in the budgets around desegregation. So that's another element of how we come together in terms of putting together these funds and what we're presenting discretely and what's not. The one thing is that to consider is that the digital budget book talks about beginning fund balances, whereas the Excel budget book just talks about budgets, right? So the fund balances are an important factor that we have to present in a budget book to meet that Governmental Accounting Standards Board requirement, or GASB. Those fund balances aren't finalized until you all approve the annual financial report, because that's when we close the entire fiscal year. So that's when those fund balances are essentially sealed, and then we can say these are final, and we can say that these are, this is what's going in there. Now, this year, there was a little bit of differentiation in terms of when the adoptions happened. So, for example, the budget book data that was used for the digital version was based on the budget revision number 1 that came in August. And this had to do with just the timing of when we had to do the budget last fiscal year, where the legislature was essentially late. We adopted a budget that didn't incorporate the new limits. We did a revision in August that did incorporate the new limits, and we wanted to use those in the digital budget book because that is essentially what we're being funded on. Whereas the Excel budget book, we took the data from July 15th. We took the old information and we put that in there because there was that timing, there was that need to make sure that we had those. So unfortunately, but essentially what we used two different sets of data, one that was more current than the other, but ultimately it comes from the same source. It comes from our financial system. But in order to address this, this is the first year that we've done digital budget book, admittedly. Very fortunately, we got an award right out the gate, right? So it's been recognized as an award-winning budget book. But during the budget review process that the government finance officers looked at, they made some recommendations on how to improve it, including how to shorten it, right? There's been a lot of criticism about its length, and so they've provided some feedback about here are some strategies to look at how to make sure that it's shortened so that it's a little bit more easily consumable. And hopefully if The legislature essentially has a budget that comes out earlier than before. We're using the same data to construct an Excel version and a digital budget version. So we'll make sure that we focus on those. I do want to say one thing though, and I call this out right here. You've been told that because your names are in the budget book, you've approved it. There is no state law or board policy that requires you to approve a budget book. That doesn't exist. All right, the state statute that sets the budget limits are the forms from the Auditor General, which you approve in July, December, and May. That's what it is. The budget book is essentially created in order to create greater transparency. That is something that a former board wanted. Renee Weatherless created that Excel version. We wanted to modernize it and be more, essentially try to be more transparent. But there is no statutory obligation, nor is there a board policy. Your names are in there because you are the principal officials of the district, just like every other administrator who is listed on there. It's kind of important to show who our governance is, and so that's why your names are listed in there. Ultimately, it's based on your board-adopted budget.
Questions?
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to move item 10.3 to the next meeting. Item 11.1, future meeting dates and agenda items.
From members of the governing board for the April 15th meeting, we will be back with item 10.3, provide an overview of the planned administrative cuts across departments. We will also be providing an update to the governing board on the work that we've been doing with the Juul settlement money. I know that's been requested by a couple of board members. We'll be coming with a progress report on that. And then we will continue our study sessions with desegregation funded departments.
Dr. Shaw?
Thank you, President Ekstrom. Dr. Trujillo, at some point, can we get either a report on your biweekly emails or some kind of way to get information about what's going on with vaccination rates in our district with the measles outbreaks? I know we've been talking about it in Pima County a lot, and I've been back and forth with Dr. Cullen about this as well. Which of our schools don't have the herd immunity rate of 95%, and how we're partnering with Pima County Health Department to make sure that we get the immunization vans out to our schools that really need it.
If there's no further business, this meeting stands adjourned.